Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in Season 2 Part 10 of What If the Transformers Crash Landed in Code Geass. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Clash of Ice and Metal. Megatron and Soundwave stood on the bridge of the Nemesis, communicating with Shockwave via the ship's monitor as they scanned the location for the next Yakin relic. The decoded coordinates indicate the second of these 8 Yakin relics lies at the very bottom of this world. Megatron noted. Ironically, the only piece of land that neither Britannia nor their rival superpowers fought for. That is to be expected, given it's just a frozen wasteland without even a hint of energon. Thundercracker said as he, Starscream, Slipstream, and Skybite stepped forward. Lord Megatron, the Seeker team is ready to be deployed for this Antarctica. Skybite said, as a Sharkticon, dealing with solidified water is no issue for me. He said in a boasting type of fashion. Starscream quickly pushed his way past Skybite to stand front and center. Of course, Skybite's natural abilities, combined with my skilled leadership, we shall have no trouble acquiring this relic, and snuffing out any Autobot or Black Knight that stands in our way. He boasted, causing Thundercracker and Slipstream to roll their eyes. Put those words into action, Starscream. Megatron said, turning around to face them. Otherwise, they are little more than empty promises. As you wish, my lord. Starscream bowed before turning to his team. Come my fellow Seekers, and guest, he cast a glance at Skybite before speaking again. The time has come once again to prove our worth to our master. Are you going to keep boasting, or are we going to move? Slipstream questioned impatiently, earning a glare from the head Seeker before leaving the bridge. Lord Megatron, though the coordinates indicate this relic is still a relative distance away from the thought elevator located in this sector, it does pose a risk to exposing its location to the enemy. Shockwave told the Decepticon leader. Unfortunate, but there is little we can do about that. Megatron replied. Though, in the worst-case scenario, would the destruction of this thought elevator halt our plans for Neo Ragnarok? No, Shockwave reported. I have studied all that I need to in order to properly enact the plan. Even in the absolute worst-case scenario of the Geass Order being discovered by the enemy, or all the thought elevators being destroyed, it will only delay Neo Ragnarok. Good. Megatron sneered as his dark Geass manifested in his optics. Our endgame is all but inevitable. Antarctica. A ground bridge portal opened up onto the frozen and uninhabited wasteland that was commonly known as the South Pole. The small unit known as Alpha Team, consisting of Optimus Prime, Zero, Elita 1, Colin, Suzaku, and Ogi emerged from the portal, the 4 humans in their respective nightmares of the Shinkiro, Gurren, Lancelot, and Gawain Narian. Welcome to the bottom of the world. Colin remarked. Optimus took out a scanner. The coordinates indicate the relic is roughly 20 kilometers from our current location. He said before transforming into his vehicle mode, followed by the other Autobots and Nightmares before driving or flying toward their destination. Why did we have to bridge so far out? Suzaku asked. Couldn't we have just teleported straight to the relic? The relic was sent here to Earth thousands of your human years ago. Elita explained. Due to Earth's plate tectonics, as well as the weather that occurs on this continent, there is a possibility the relic could have been moved from its landing coordinates by natural means. And given the vast amount of distance that could be covered in that particular time frame, we need to conduct a thorough sweep of the area. Zero said as he began to type specific commands in the Shinkiro's cockpit. I'm already scanning for any possible Cybertronian beacons, if in the event the Decepticons were to locate the relic before we do. If that's the case, we'll need to hurry. Suzaku said. I don't want to risk another possible weapon of mass destruction falling into Megatron's hands. Hey Optimus, is it okay for us to be out here so long? Ogi asked. I mean, the last time you and the other bots were in a place like this, you almost froze to death. Rest assured Ogi, the current temperatures and weather conditions are not extreme enough to affect our biology. We'll be just fine, Optimus replied. Just don't ask me to step outside. Colin said. I never could stand the cold. After a moment, Colin made some adjustments onto the Gurren's communication before making contact with the Shinkiro. Hey Lelouch, you there? She asked. Taking off his mask for a moment, noticing this was a private channel, Lelouch responded. I'm here. Something wrong, Colin? No, nothing's wrong, she answered. But, I've been meaning to ask, what do you plan to do when this is all over? Well, our next step is establishing our charter and finding a way to clear the Decepticons off the, Lelouch began. No, that's not what I meant. Colin interrupted. What I mean is, when the war is over. We beat the cons, and we've established world peace for everyone. What are you planning on doing after all that? Lelouch's eyes slowly widened. For one of the few moments in his life, he didn't have an answer to give. At least not right away. When the war is over. He had every confidence they could win the war and establish a new world where all the people could live in peace and happiness with one another. But, his own personal plans for after that. He honestly never really considered that. Lelouch, are you okay? He heard Colin's voice through the channel, snapping him out of his thoughts. Why yeah, I'm alright. You just went silent for a minute. Colin said with concern. I'm fine, it's just, I never really thought about it. Lelouch revealed, much to Colin's surprise. I've been thinking about trying to secure everyone's futures for so long, I guess I never really considered my own. If you're trying to establish yourself as one of those selfless hero types, I might just pull over, board your nightmare and kick your ass. Colin told him. I thought you didn't want to get out in the cold. Lelouch joked. Lelouch, I'm serious. You're telling me that you never once thought about your own future? Colin questioned. You never thought of a life for yourself? I mean outside of being zero. Not even, maybe finding someone, and starting a family. Colin was internally glad this conversation wasn't directly in person, otherwise he might see a blush on her face. The young revolutionary took a moment to think about what she said before he gave his answers. All these years, my first thought has been trying to build a world where Nunnally could find happiness. You know, my sister has been my first priority for me for a very long time, so much so that, I never really gave any thought to my own future. I guess I didn't see anything past me becoming zero. A sad smile formed on his face. Guess that's pretty sad, huh? A bit, but the fact that you're actually admitting something like that shows how much you've changed since then. And it's a good change. Colin said, smiling genuinely in the direction of the Shinkiro. Even though he couldn't see her face, Lelouch returned the smile. What about you? You have a plan for your future? Actually, yeah, I do. Colin revealed. I kinda got the idea from Ayano during our time in Europia. She said she wanted to rebuild Japan once this is all over, and I know Ogi wants that too. And I want to help them. That sounds like a good idea. Lelouch said with an approving nod. The idea of rebuilding Japan after enduring so much hardship at the hands of Britannia and the Decepticons did appeal to him quite a bit. As did the idea of working alongside Colin to do it. In fact, the idea of working with Colin was appealing all on its own. Well, that certainly sounds familiar. Eltia's voice chimed in on the communication, causing them both to stutter. Alita, Lelouch exclaimed. How the hell did, this is a private line. Colin shouted in anger. Yeah, and it was easy for me to hack. They could practically see Alita's smirk, despite her being in her vehicle mode. Don't worry, Optimus, Suzaku, and Ogi can't hear us. They'd better not. Colin shouted again. Seriously though, that sounds like a good plan, Colin. Alita told her. Certainly sounds familiar to something I've heard of before. Am I correct to assume you and Optimus had similar plans for Cybertron? Lelouch asked. Well, Orion and I did, but yes, Alita confirmed with a feeling of sad nostalgia inside her. Colin looked in remorse. Sorry things didn't quite work out. Thank you, and it's fine. Alita said with a slight sigh. It may be too late for Cybertron, but your world has hope. And I'm going to make sure it gets the future it deserves. Thank you, just don't sacrifice yourself to do it. Lelouch said. And, this may be too personal and I don't want to overstep my bounds here or anything, but I'm sure Optimus still cares. He may not be Orion Pax anymore, but just because something's different doesn't mean it still can't be good. Things do change, right? At first, there wasn't a response, and Lelouch was a bit worried he may have indeed overstepped his bounds and got a bit too personal. Lelouch, thank you. Alita replied. You're a good kid, and maybe you're right. Sometimes we can't go back to the past, but that doesn't mean the future can't be as bright if not brighter. And those kinds of futures are always worth fighting for. His lips curved into a smile. I couldn't agree more. Colin grinned. So, let's get this damn relic so we're that much closer to that future. Sounds like a plan to me. Alita said. Well then, a determined grin fell on Lelouch's face as well. Time to roll out. Amidst the darkening skies over Antarctica, a group of flyers came straight down toward a massive ice wall before transforming to reveal Starscream, Skybite, Thundercracker, Slipstream, and 6 Seeker Viacons and landing on the ground. We've arrived at the coordinates. Starscream said to the group, only to gasp in shock at seeing not only was the relic no longer there, but a massive chunk of the ice wall had been carved out, with a series of frozen flags placed around the outside of the man-made hole. The relic has been taken. Skybite questioned. How? When? Search the area. Starscream ordered as the group began to split off and look for any sign as to what may have occurred here. Thundercracker walked toward the hole and scanned it with a sensor built into his arm, analyzing the dimensions of the hole as well as its structure. Commander Starscream, there are no vehicle tracks. One Seeker Viacon reported as the Decepticons grouped back together. Or any other sign that someone has been here recently. Well, the relic did not just happen to get up and walk away. Something clearly happened to it. The Seeker commander groaned in irritation. Perhaps it wasn't recent, Slipstream said as she kneeled to pick up one of the frozen flags. Something could have happened a while back. You might be onto something, Thundercracker said as he finished his scan. According to this, that hole was carved out approximately 7 Earth months ago. That's shortly before Britannia's fall. Skybite noted. Maybe they had something to do with it. What would Britannia gain from this? This continent has little to no energon for them to harvest. Slipstream said. They weren't that stupid to conquer a land where they could easily freeze to death. Oh, the people of Britannia were quite idiotic, Slipstream, I assure you. Starscream said as he began to pace the area. But I do have a possible theory. Perhaps the relic gave off a similar reading to what they thought was Sakuradite, something they picked up from one of their primitive satellites, and they've sent a team to locate the source of the phenomenon. However, if Thundercracker's readings were true and it was unearthed shortly before Britannia's fall, they would not have the necessary time to properly analyze what they've discovered. And given how weak humans are to the elements of their own vile planet, they would likely have a base nearby to store the relic and analyze it under conditions more habitable for them. Skybite followed along. Maybe the relic is still at that base. Perhaps you should leave the theories to those who are intelligent enough to conceive of them, you quintessent experiment. Starscream went into Skybite's face. I would appreciate it if you didn't compare me to them. The Sharkticon growled as he got back into Starscream's face in retaliation, both looking ready to tear the other apart at a moment's notice. That's enough. Thundercracker got in between them to stop any altercation from occurring. Let's focus on getting the relic. We'll fan out to find that base Starscream mentioned. I'm afraid it'll have to wait. We have company. Slipstream interrupted. The Decepticons all turned in the direction she was facing to see the vehicle modes of Alpha Team arrive before they all transformed. Immediately, the Black Knights had their weapons at the ready as Optimus Prime simply stepped forward. The Autobots and their pets. Starscream growled. Starscream. Optimus said as Lelouch, Colin, Suzaku, and even Ogi narrowed their eyes at the Decepticon second in command they all knew at one point or another. Well, it seems for once we're both late to the party. Thundercracker said. So, you do not possess the relic? Optimus assumed. Unfortunately, we do not. Starscream admitted with reluctance. We all know you're a liar, Starscream. Suzaku accused the leader of the Seekers as the Lancelot drew its Varus rifle and aimed it at him. So pardon me if I don't sound convinced. Oh, Starscream certainly is a pathological liar, but for once he's telling the truth. Slipstream said, earning a growl from Starscream. We don't have the relic. Which would mean that we are on equal footing, were it not for the fact that you are all outnumbered 2-1. Skybite said. Yeah, you should have brought a lot more guys with you. Colin smirked. Oh, I remember you. Starscream glared at the Gurren. That upstart human wretch who destroyed as many of our forces as any other Autobot. I am going to enjoy snuffing you and your precious Zero out of existence. Do your worst, Starscream. You're no Megatron, Zero said. With that, Starscream fired both his missiles toward Alpha Team, forcing them to scatter as the Decepticons opened fire on their energon blasters. Before Optimus even had the chance to attack, Thundercracker shot after him. The largest of the Seekers used the speed from his feet boosters to gain enough momentum that when he rammed Optimus with his shoulder, it knocked the Autobot leader off his feet and sent him rolling back along the ice. However, Optimus quickly recovered and opened fire with his ion cannon, which Thundercracker avoided as he hovered in the air while also returning fire. Elita 1 and Ogi returned fire in their respective nightmares to some of the Seeker Vehicons, but the female Autobot was shot in the shoulder by an energon blast from the smirking Slipstream before she transformed into her jet mode and flew into the sky above her in taunting fashion. "Ogi, can you handle these guys?" Elita asked. In response, Ogi's Gawain Narian transformed into its Cybertronian tank mode and fired a blast to obliterate 2 Seeker Vehicons in one shot. "You even need to ask," he replied confidently. Elita nodded before transforming into her vehicle mode to pursue after Slipstream before Ogi resumed fire on the approaching Vehicons. The Gurren Surger Claw grappled onto the face of a Seeker Vehicon before Colin activated it, sending that same Vehicon to a fiery grave. Just as the dust cleared, Skybite's Shark Mode shot and rammed into the Gurren, knocking it to the ground as Skybite bit onto the Red Nightmare's right shoulder. However, Colin quickly shot both of her Harkins from the Gurren's shoulders to push Skybite off. He flailed a bit before diving straight down into the ice, burrowing through it and disappearing before Colin had a chance to retaliate. The Shinkiro hovered in the air and fired both its shoulder-mounted Hadron cannons at the flying Starscream as he literally flew circles in the air around the Black Nightmare. Both beams managed to miss him as Starscream circled around and flew toward the Shinkiro's back, firing a set of missiles, but Zero was quick to activate the Nightmare's absolute defense system in the rear and take the missile blasts. The shields vanished before Zero fired the Harkins from the Shinkiro's knees, but Starscream's jet mode spun around to knock them back before attempting to ram the Shinkiro, but Zero pulled back on the controls to limbo underneath Starscream's flight path while also quickly lifting the right foot to kick Starscream and send him hurtling across the sky, though he quickly recovered and began to circle around. Insolent human. No matter how advanced your nightmare is, challenging a Seeker to aerial combat is suicide. You cannot overpower. Starscream's rant was cut off by a shrill scream as the Lancelot quickly flew in and sliced one of its MVS blades, which Starscream barely avoided as he flew upward before the Lancelot came to halt, its energy wings shining brightly in the dark sky. "That's why I'm here. You could say I'm Zero's wingman," Suzaku said with a smirk, something he shared with Lelouch. "Thank you, Suzaku," Lelouch thought, grateful once again to have his old friend by his side. As Starscream continued to fly and circle around the pair, he growled with anger. "Megatron's greatest mistake was ever allowing you to live, Kururugi." He unleashed yet another volley of missiles, this time aimed at the Lancelot, which drew its Varus rifle in its other hand and fired to intercept them, lighting up the sky with an explosion. Elita continued to drive around the area as Slipstream's jet mode flew down from behind before opening fire on the pink Autobot. Though she proved quick enough to avoid most of the shots, the ice was proven to be slippery and made it difficult to maneuver. Decide to use that to her advantage, however, Elita waited until Slipstream flew in close enough before transforming and sliding on her back, gaining more distance from the momentum she gained her vehicle mode while also returning fire with her Energon blaster to clip one of Slipstream's wings and send her spiraling and crashing onto the icy ground in front of her as Elita slid to a halt and quickly stood up. However, the respite didn't last very long as Slipstream rushed out of the crash site to punch Elita across the face and delivered a kick to her side to knock her down. Slipstream then leapt into the air and fell back down to try and smash her feet into Elita's face. Fortunately, Elita rolled out of the way as Slipstream landed. She quickly got back up via a handstand and struck both her feet into Slipstream to knock her down as she landed on her feet and make a combat stance. Slipstream recovered as well before engaging in hand-to-hand combat. Optimus, meanwhile, continued to fire at Thundercracker's hovering form, who returned fire and kept Optimus on his toes. The Blue Seeker then flew directly at Optimus, drawing his arm blade to slice at him, which Optimus countered as he drew his own blade to block before forming an ion blaster in his free hand to shoot point blank at Thundercracker, striking his shoulder and knocking him to the ground. However, Thundercracker quickly pulled himself back up and was forced on the defensive to counter Optimus' superior swordsmanship skills. Ogi fired another shot from the Gawain Narian's tank mode to obliterate the last of the Seeker Viacons. Ah yeah, you like that. Who's next? Suddenly, the ice beneath him broke apart as Skybite's shark mode shot up to knock the Nightmare's tank mode into the air, causing it to land upside down. Though Ogi was still able to transform the Gawain Narian back to normal, it only made it easier for Skybite to pin him down as he transformed into his robot mode. Like tuna, it's always best when cut out of the can. Skybite's claws extended as he looked ready to rip Ogi out of his nightmare, but as he brought them down, the Gurren appeared to lock its saber knife or claws. You get the hell away from him, fishboy. Colin glared. Oh, like I haven't heard that one before. Skybite replied sarcastically as he transformed into his shark mode again and bit down on the Gurren's knife-holding arm, flying to push the Gurren back. But the Gurren lifted its Surger arm and created an energy disc to blast point-blank at Skybite, knocking him away. Though it didn't seem to stop him for long before he burrowed into the ice once more. Damn it, Colin cursed. It's like a game of whack-a-mole. Colin, I have an idea. Ogi said as the Gawain Narian stood back up. Use the Surger on the ice. Superheat the water and force him up. I'll handle the rest. Okay, get ready. Colin agreed to the idea and plunged the Surger claw into the ice, setting the power level to maximum before activating her Nightmare's primary weapon. Waves of red energy shot out in all directions as the ice around the entire area quickly began to melt, boil, and even evaporate. This had even affected the battles Optimus and Alita were having with Thundercracker and Slipstream respectively. Though they were still at a distance away that they didn't have to deal with the worst of the effects, the ice beneath all four of them broke apart and melted, causing them to sink up to their knees in the water. She's using the Radiant Wave Surger to turn the entire area to her advantage, Thundercracker noted, but this surprise left him open for Optimus to strike him in the chest with enough force to send him crashing and skidding through the semi-boiling water. It took a moment for Thundercracker to try and pull himself up, but Optimus was able to use that to his advantage to grab Thundercracker by his shoulder, hoist him up and spin him around before throwing him to the nearest ice wall, which he slammed into. The impact caused the ice to break apart in the form of a small avalanche as Thundercracker fell back into the water, with the wall collapsing over him to bury him alive. Slipstream found herself struggling to move being knee-high in the boiling water, and Alita used this to her advantage to swiftly move in and punch Slipstream in her shoulder, and then drove her elbow into her enemy's side before lifting her foot up to kick Slipstream down. You Seekers might have the advantage in the air, but spend too much time up there, and you're out of your element when you're stuck in a situation like this. Alita said before maneuvering around Slipstream's retaliating punch. But I'm used to fighting on the ground. Alita parried another punch before forming her arm blades to slice up on Slipstream's face, causing her to scream in pain and hold her face. Autobot wretch. Slipstream fired her Energon blasters in retaliation, but Alita had already ducked and tackled Slipstream, keeping her stuck underwater before transforming to push her further and further away from the area. Though Alita couldn't drown Slipstream like this, she was able to get more distance away as the water became cooler and began to solidify, turning back to ice the further she drove from the epicenter of Colin's attack. Alita transformed and fired a charged Energon shot to further propel Slipstream into the semi-frozen water before getting her stuck in the solid ice, which Alita fired around to collapse and bury the female Seeker in. Back with Colin and Ogi, the water around them had almost completely evaporated as both their nightmares were engulfed in a cloud of steam. The intense heat from Colin's Surger had likely evaporated all the ice in the immediate area. But regardless, the objective was still reached as Skybite shot out of the boiling water with a scream. His outer chassis looked charred and burnt as smoke and steam came from his body. Ah, so hot, so hot. Skybite transformed out of his shark mode as he writhed in pain. This of course, left him open for the Gawain Narian to fire its Hadron cannons at him, causing the already evaporated ground to explode even further and blast Skybite away. I never did like seafood. Ogi said confidently as Colin pulled the Gurren's claw back up and flashed it dramatically, the young redhead pilot inside grinning wildly. Back in the air, Starscream and Suzaku continued their aerial duel, moving at equal amount of speeds and clashing with one another as the Lancelot kept up with Starscream's jet mode. The Lancelot swung the MVS in one hand while firing almost all its /harkins at Starscream, but he was able to avoid them all and fly further away to get some distance, flying closer to the ground, but Suzaku retaliated with a blast from his Varus rifles as well as a hail of energy projectiles from the Lancelot's energy wings. Multiple explosions lit up the ground as Starscream flew just barely past all the attacks before curving upward straight toward the sky. "He's too fast. I can't hit him," Suzaku stated. Running away has always been his specialty. "Let's him dodge this." The Shinkiro flew in front of the Lancelot as all its systems got a lock on the area Starscream was in. "We'll turn his precious sky against him." The Shinkiro opened its chest to launch a prism before firing a beam at it. The prism then refracted the beam, splitting it off into dozens of smaller, yet deadly, lasers all across the area that Starscream flew. From then on, the Seeker found it near impossible to navigate through around the beams and found himself struck in his rear wing by one, causing him to fall straight toward the ground, crash landing in his jet mode before transforming and rolling along the ice. The prism returned to the Shinkiro as it and the Lancelot land in front of the downed Starscream, aiming their primary weapons at him as he tried to pull himself up with a growl. You wretched humans!" Starscream yelled, glaring at the two nightmares. "Who are you to deny me the very skies? They are my birthright as a Seeker. You have only yourself to blame, Starscream," Optimus said as he, Alita, the Gurren, and Gawain Narian approached to surround him. "You frequently underestimate humans, and that has led to your defeat. If it weren't for their precious nightmares, I would have long exterminated their pathetic kind," Starscream exclaimed. "Have you looked in the mirror lately?" Colin said with a cocked eyebrow. "Now Starscream, you might not have the relic, but I bet you know where to find it," Alita told him as he pulled himself up. "And you will take us there." "Yes, of course," Starscream said, appearing to accept his defeat. "I will lead you straight to the relic. Now, if you would follow me." Before we do that, the lead Seeker turned around to see the cockpit of the Shinkiro opened as Zero stood up. The visor in his mask then opened as the Geass sigil appeared in both Lelouch's eyes. "We need to know you're not deceiving us," Starscream gasped as he saw the sigil, just as it flew into his optics. A faint red glow appeared as Starscream was completely entranced by Lelouch's Geass. "Of course, what do you wish to know? Do you truly know where to find the relic?" Zero asked as his visor closed. "I do not know its exact location, but I do have a general idea of where to find it," the Geass Starscream replied. "Explain what you mean by that," Optimus said. "We believe the relic may have been excavated by Britannia just shortly before its nation's fall," the Geass Starscream explained. "Perhaps they mistook it for Sakuradite or something else they can use, but that is irrelevant now. Given Britannia's lack of technological progress compared to that of Cybertronians, they likely have a base nearby that may have been abandoned upon Britannia's fall. The relic is most likely there. Do you know where exactly this base is?" Alita asked. "Did you happen to see any man-made structures from the direction you came?" Starscream responded that question with one of his own. "No." Alita shook her head. "Then the only other direction this base could be is eastward." Starscream pointed to the only remaining pathway between two large ice walls. "At least that is my theory. Lead us there," Zero ordered. "Be sure you stay within our sight." "As you wish." Starscream transformed and flew in his jet mode, though he maintained a relatively slow speed that enabled the now transformed Autobots and Nightmares to keep up with him at a steady pace, while also hovering somewhat close to the ground. "Suzaku," Lelouch spoke to his friend. "I know how you feel about using Geass like this, but you don't have to explain it to me, Lelouch. I already understand." Suzaku accepted. "We need to find this relic and secure it as soon as possible. And given this is Starscream we're talking about, using your Geass on him is a less risky option than trusting his word." "On that much, I agree," Optimus added. "Starscream's true loyalty has always been to himself. He has only been truthful on the rarest of circumstances." "Yes, I know." Lelouch was glad to hear they approved of it. He knew they would give the circumstances, but it was still nice to hear. "Hey, since we have the Decepticon second in command under your little spell, Lelouch, I'd say now's a good time to get some good intel," Colin said almost evilly. "I agree." Lelouch gave his titular smirk. "Starscream, tell us everything about Decepticon intelligence on this planet. I cannot, Starscream replied, much to their surprise. What do you mean you can't? Ogi asked. You're Megatron's second in command. Yes, but I do not know all Decepticon intelligence. Starscream clarified. Why is that? Zero questioned. After Britannia's fall and the establishment of our new empire on this planet, Megatron only shared limited information with me. Starscream explained. I suspect he has given only pieces of information to a select few of his subordinates. This way, if one of us were to be captured by the enemy, most likely your forces, not all Decepticon intelligence would be at your fingertips. Lelouch scowled slightly, though he wasn't surprised. This was to be expected from Megatron. Who else is part of this? I do not know for certain, but I suspect Soundwave and Shockwave to be among them, and most likely Steeljaw as well. Starscream answered. Well, what can you tell us? Alita asked. I have the general layout of armament surrounding the continent that was under the control of the former Britannia, as well as intelligence regarding the Seekers. Starscream explained before coming to a stop and transforming into his robot mode, followed by the Alpha team as they came to a stop at a ridge that overlooked a small human military base in the middle of a large frozen valley. Ah, as I suspected, an old Britannian base. We will likely find the relic there. He was about to walk forward. Wait, stop. Zero told him, causing Starscream to stop in his tracks. Let's make certain the relic is still in this base and it wasn't taken by Britannia when this base was evacuated. Optimus took out his Energon scanner and managed to calibrate it for even the tiniest trace of Energon, something that even an inactive Yakin relic would carry in order to power it, be it a sacred item of the Primes or a Decepticon doomsday weapon. He did manage to get a small Energon detection as the device beeped slightly. The relic is still here, Optimus said. Then let's get it and get out of here, Colin said. Agreed. Starscream, tell us everything you can on what Decepticon intelligence you know. Zero said as they proceeded forward. As you wish. Meanwhile, back at the site of the battle, amidst a zone of broken ice and boiling water, something shot up and out of the water, which was revealed to be the jet mode of the now recovered Thundercracker, who transformed to land back on solid ground and regain his bearings. He was soon joined by Slipstream as her hand broke through the ice and she picked herself up. That went well, Slipstream commented sarcastically. Where are those two idiots? I'm an intellectual. They heard Skybite's voice as his shark mode emerged from the wall he was blasted into before soaring to land rather roughly on the ground near them as he transformed as well. And you try swimming through irradiated water. It's not pleasant, even by Sharkticon standards. Enough. Thundercracker got in between them once again. I swear, I feel like I'm surrounded by bickering children. He thought in frustration before getting back to the mission. Since Starscream's not here, it's likely he's been captured and is leading the enemy to where he suspects the relic might be. Of course he is, that useless coward. Slipstream said with a sigh. Why does Megatron even bother keeping him around? Perhaps to keep himself looking over his own shoulder and expecting betrayals. Skybite assumed. Slipstream thought about it for a moment. Huh, I never thought of it like that. That's actually pretty clever. Getting back to the mission, if the Autobots and Black Knights are on their way to the relic, then we have a chance at finding it ourselves. Thundercracker pointed toward the distance where a set of vehicle tracks in the snow, likely from Optimus and Alita's respective vehicle modes, going off into the distance. Let's move. With that, all three Decepticons transformed and flew away. If Zero's here, then Starscream is likely under the influence of that Geass power that Megatron has told us about. And if that's the case, then I have a little surprise of my own. Optimus managed to pry open the main door to one of the two large hangars of the base, allowing Alpha Team and the still Geassed Starscream to enter inside. The hangar appeared to be completely empty, save for a large block of ice with the relic frozen inside. Bingo. Colin smiled as they approached their frozen prize. The relic remains sealed in the ice. Optimus acknowledged. But what is it, exactly? Ogi asked. Not sure. Zero then gazed to their ally. Starscream, do you know what this relic is? I do not know. Starscream replied automatically. I can't quite see it clearly through all this ice. Perhaps if it were free, I would be able to identify it. Then let's get it out. Suzaku said, but before they could even make a move, the group turned around at the sound of Energon blasters being primed at them from behind. Turning your back on the cons to save yourself, Starscream. Slipstream commented as she, Thundercracker, and Skybite had their weapons at the ready. Why am I not surprised? I am merely doing as ordered. Starscream replied robotically. Oh, so you did use your Geass on him, huh Zero? Thundercracker observed, causing Lelouch to narrow his eyes before the Seeker scientist smirk. Too bad for you, I have a counter for that. Activating Geass Canceller. What? Zero exclaimed, his own eyes widening in shock. Thundercracker's optics suddenly turned green, complete with an upside-down Geass sigil as a green energy aura shot out in all directions, much to everyone's surprise as the red glow in Starscream's optics, as well as a red ring in Suzaku's own eyes, flashed before disappearing forever. Starscream gasped as he looked around in surprise. Huh, what? What did he just say? A Geass Canceller? Ogi questioned as all the heroes looked in shock, even Optimus was caught off guard. Did you really think we spent the past 6 months dedicated to just uprooting Britannia? Thundercracker said with a confident grin. Shockwave had developed a counter to Geass if in the event an enemy were to use that power against us, the Geass Canceller, which can negate the effects of any enemy Geass, be it from humans or Cybertronians. A little gift he gave to a select few of his subordinates, including myself. I see, the shocked Suzaku thought. But if that's the case, then Lelouch's command to live is also gone. Lelouch growled underneath his mask. Megatron's resourcefulness truly knows no bounds, Even with your Geass Canceller, we will not allow you to obtain this relic. Optimus declared to the Decepticons. Got that right, we don't need Geass to wipe the floor with you guys. We can do that the old-fashioned way. Colin shot the Gurren/Harkins at the trio of Decepticons, forcing them to split as she and the rest of her team charged out of the hangar and began to engage the enemy. Skybite and the two Seekers transformed and took to the skies as the Lancelot and Gurren did the same, giving pursuit while Optimus, Alita, the Gawain Narian, and the Shinkiro provided covering fire from the ground. However, Alita noticed something. Wait, if Starscream's not under the effect of a Geass, she turned around in shock to see the glaring Starscream activate his own Energon blaster and shoot the roof of the hangar just above the main door, causing the front half of the structure to collapse and seal himself in with the relic. Starscream's got the relic, Alita exclaimed. Scarp. Zero cursed. Help the others with the Seekers and Flying Shark, I'll get to Starscream. With the enemy momentarily distracted, Starscream turned his Energon blasters on the block of ice and began to fire at it, avoiding shooting the relic and possibly damaging it. They dare to control me. Me. I am nobody's puppet. Starscream ranted as he had cleared away the ice and exposed the relic inside. He got a good look at it, the relic appearing to be a compacted disc of sorts, but Starscream recognized it immediately. Armor, of Decepticon origin. The head Seeker smirked as he picked up the relic and placed it on his chest. Back outside, Suzaku and Colin fired their respective Nightmares ranged weapons formed the Surger Claw and Varus rifle at Thundercracker and Slipstream as they continued to fly up and around them before returning fire with their missiles, prompting the two ace pilots to fly away as the missiles tracked them. Colin fired a Harkin to destroy the missiles following her while Suzaku fired another shot from his Varus for the missiles tracking him. Skybite had dug into the ice, burrowing through it as Optimus, Alita, and Ogi tried to track him, only for Skybite to pop out of the ice beneath them, knocking all three of them down from the impact before Skybite shot at Optimus with open jaws. Though Optimus was able to catch the jaws and keep them pried open and from biting down, Skybite's boosters allowed him to keep pushing forward and made it difficult for Optimus to counter. Meanwhile, the Shinkiro had managed to easily break through the rubble of the hangar door, but before Zero even made a move to enter. Smash. Asterisk. The Shinkiro was sent crashing into Optimus, and by extension, Skybite. All three slid on the ice as the shocked Alita and Ogi recovered. The event drew the attention of Colin and Suzaku from the air, as well as Thundercracker and Slipstream. None of them were prepared for what they saw. It was Starscream, clad in a hulking set of shining armor that allowed the Seeker to stand on even greater height than Optimus himself. "Wah, what is that?" the shocked Ogi exclaimed. "The Apex armor," Alita said gravely. "A perfect fit," Starscream sneered. Optimus and Zero both recovered as the Lancelot and Gurren flew closer to the ground and provide aid for their allies while Skybite stood up and stepped back to get some distance. Optimus, Alita, what are we looking at right now? Zero asked. It is the Apex armor. Optimus began. It was forged by Solus Prime long ago, but it was commandeered by the Decepticons during the war. It is almost completely indestructible and impenetrable. Starscream laughed. We're up to you or Alpha Trion. This glorious piece of equipment would have simply gathered dust in that overgrown museum you call Yakin. Instead, I shall use it to crush all of you like the insects you are. I'd like to see you try. Colin was the first to attack, shooting the Gurren forward. Colin, wait. Alita called out to her, but she was already on the smirking Starscream. The Gurren's claw grabbed the Apex armor's head unit before activating the Radiant Wave Surger. A large surge of red energy shot out from around the gauntlet and engulfed the outer shell of the armor before exploding. The Gurren pulled back briefly as the smoke began to clear, only to reveal the armor wasn't even scratched. What? Colin shouted, seeing her Nightmare's signature weapon not even dealing a hint of damage. Not so big and strong now, are you, human wretch? Starscream used his armored hand to backslap the Gurren, sending it crashing and tumbling through the hangar on the other side of the base. You three. Starscream pointed to Thundercracker, Slipstream, and Skybite as they regrouped. Stay out of this. I want to test my shiny new armor by myself. Go ahead. Thundercracker waved off. Immediately, Optimus and Alita opened fire with their Energon blasters as they began to circle around Starscream, while the Shinkiro, Lancelot, and Gawain Narian also went on the attack, gaining up on the armored Starscream. Skybite, there's nothing but frozen water beneath us, right? Thundercracker asked the Sharkticon in a hushed whisper. Yes, why? Skybite replied. Use your natural ability to break and collapse the ice beneath Starscream if he decided to test his new toy on us. Thundercracker said. You think he'll betray us? Slipstream asked. Oh, what am I saying? Of course, he would. He wouldn't be Starscream if the thought hadn't crossed his mind. Thundercracker answered. He might even get some funny ideas about overthrowing Megatron, yet again. Probably using the Apex armor to beat him to a pulp. Fair point. Skybite acknowledged. I'll move in if he decides to turn on us. But for now, let's just enjoy the show. Slipstream smirked as they continued to watch the battle in front of him. Energon blasts, slash Harkins, and even Varus rifles were all shot at the armored Starscream from all directions, but he just stood there to tank each of the attacks as the Apex armor wasn't even chipped. Deciding to go on the attack, he rushed Optimus first, who tried to punch him, but Starscream caught Optimus by the first before hoisting him up and throwing him away. Alita tried to come in from behind, slashing across the armor with her arm blades, but Starscream quickly turned around to smack Alita and knock her into a pile of cargo containers. The Gawain Narian fired its Hadron cannons at the armor, though the impact did knock Starscream back slightly. He used the delay after the fire to rush Ogi. Though Zero brought the Shinkiro down to block Starscream's path and quickly activated its absolute defense system, however Starscream barreled through the shield with the Apex armor, easily shattering it and ramming his elbow into the Shinkiro to knock it into Ogi's Nightmare and send them rolling back. What's wrong, Zero? Run out of miracles. Starscream taunted. I haven't had this much fun since I leveled Pendragon. The Lancelot then flew straight at Starscream, drawing one of its MVS blades and swung it down onto him. However, Starscream had also pulled back an armored fist and swung it just as the blade was brought down, shattering the blade in that instant, much to Suzaku's horror. But he didn't have time to process it as Starscream grabbed the Lancelot by its shoulders, and by extension the energy wing system, and had already begun to squeeze in an attempt to crush the Lancelot. And you, Suzaku Kururugi, I am going to crush you to a smear inside your precious Lancelot. Consider it retribution for all your never-ending pontification back in Area 11. Starscream exclaimed. He continued to squeeze the Lancelot, taking his sweet time while doing it. But this left him open for a combined assault of the Hadron and Radiant Wave Surger of the Shinkiro and Gurren from behind. The impact startled Starscream and forced him to let go of the Lancelot, prompting Suzaku to drive it and regroup with the others. Suzaku, are you alright? Zero asked. The Lancelot's still operational, Suzaku reported. But the energy wing systems are too badly damaged, I can't fly anymore. We're throwing everything we have at him, and it's not even scratched. What the hell is that armor made of? Colin questioned. He's coming, Alita exclaimed as the armored Starscream charged them once again. Scatter and keep your distance, Optimus ordered, prompting the group of 6 to break apart and maneuver around Starscream, while also firing at him with their long-ranged weapons. After taking a moment to mentally analyze what he saw with the Apex armor, Lelouch established contact with his team. Everyone listen, I'm communicating on our comm channels so Starscream can't hear us. Optimus, do you know if the Apex armor has long-ranged weapons? No, it does not, Optimus replied, firing his ion cannon. Nor is the user able to transform while they wear the armor. Which means Starscream can't fly. Ogi realized. That's some good news at least. In that case, I have a plan. Lelouch told everyone as he hovered and circled the area, using the Shinkiro to scan the ice below. I need all of you to hit Starscream from every direction but keep your distance. Make sure he's focused on all of you. I'm going to charge Shinkiro's main cannon to absolute maximum power, channeling all the Shinkiro's energy into it. If it can't break the Apex armor, then maybe it can at least damage it. And if it doesn't, what then? Colin asked as she threw another projectile from the Gurren Surger claw. Lelouch, if you do that, then your nightmare will be almost completely drained. Suzaku tried to warn him as the Lancelot continued to fire its Varus rifle, while circling around Starscream. You may have motor control, but that would be it. Your weapons won't be able to work anymore, at least not till you're powered back up. Then Starscream will focus on me alone. Zero replied. That armor might be indestructible, but it doesn't take away Starscream's most grave weakness, his arrogance. While he's focused on me, fire all your weapons on the ground around him and send him plummeting. There's nothing but ice in the ocean below. But, if we do that, even if we do get away, the cons still get the armor. Ogi stated. That may be our only option, now. Alita said with reluctance, moving in her vehicle mode around the base and keeping her gaze on the armored Starscream. We don't have anything to remove it from Starscream, so we may have to cut our losses with this one. Agreed. We will live to fight another day. Even Optimus seemed to go along with this plan. We'll buy you the time you need, Lelouch. Suzaku said. Do what you have to do. He charged the Lancelot at the armored Starscream once more, firing his Varus rifle to keep Starscream from attacking before leaping to perform a spinning kick in the air, which did manage to push Starscream back a few steps before the Lancelot flipped and landed behind Starscream. Are your fancy flips and kicks the best you can do, Suzaku? Megatron sorely overestimated your talents. Starscream continued to taunt. Maybe it's the same reason he keeps you as his second in command. Suzaku shot back, causing Starscream to growl as he focused on the Lancelot. As he did, the Shinkiro continued to hover and circle around the battle as Lelouch begun to redirect all his Nightmare's power into its central diffusion structure phase transition cannon. It was already beginning to surpass its normal charge. Ogi transformed the Gawain Narian into its tank mode and fired its heavy cannon into the armored Starscream. Though the blasts didn't seem to damage the Apex armor, it did draw Starscream's attention and leave him vulnerable for Alita, who had climbed onto the roof of one of the hangars before jumping down to land on the armor's shoulders and concentrate her Energon blaster fire into the armor's right shoulder joint, hoping it would do some damage. Starscream struggled for a bit, but he managed to shake Alita off and grab her by the arm. Optimus quickly drew his Energon axe and brought it onto the arm that held Alita. Though Starscream did release Alita, he turned to face Optimus as he clapped his armored hands onto the axe that was brought down for another strike. Starscream then wrenched the axe from Optimus' hands before sending him flying with a single punch. Starscream then felt many energy projectiles strike him from above, courtesy of the Gurren that flew toward him from the air. However, Starscream leapt with the armor to smack the Gurren out of the sky, leading it to crash on the ground. Might beats flight, Starscream boasted. Starscream. The Shinkiro landed some distance in front of the armored Decepticon. Let's see how well your new toy can withstand this. Zero activated the Shinkiro's central cannon. The chest piece opened up to unleash a massive purple beam, one that almost the size of the nightmare that fired it. Starscream didn't expect such an attack as the beam not only seemed to engulf him, but also obliterated what was left of the hangar behind him. All of his friends and allies, even Optimus, were surprised at the sheer amount of power that was displayed from the attack. Even the Decepticons of Slipstream, Thundercracker, and Skybite were caught off guard. The beam stopped firing as the Shinkiro went limp, descending to its knees as nearly all its power had been drained by that attack. Lelouch saw all the readings from his Nightmare's cockpit that all systems had been drained to almost or completely zero. He still had motor controls to move the Nightmare, but the most he could do with it is either steer his Nightmare away or redirect it for a short burst in flight to gain a relatively small distance. Despite that, Lelouch kept his eyes focused on the smoke as he prepared for the worst. And the worst had indeed come to pass as the smoke cleared to reveal the laughing Starscream, the Apex armor not even remotely dented or scratched. That tickled. Starscream boasted and cackled. Fools! Not only am I intelligent, I am invincible. I'm glad to see all that power hasn't gone to your head. Zero said, not even trying to hide his sarcasm, causing Starscream to focus all his attention on him. Make your little jokes, boy. Starscream slowly made his way toward him, taking his sweet time while doing so. However, this is exactly what the rest of Zero's team wanted, knowing what to do next as they got into position. The armored Starscream then loomed over the near-depowered Shinkiro. Tell me something, Zero. Since we've crossed paths, you and your kind have felt they could stand on equal footing with us thanks to your precious nightmares. But now that I have armor of my own, the odds have once again shifted in my favor as they were always intended. With that in mind, how does it feel to finally know your place beneath me? Boast all you want, Starscream. My armor still has one distinct advantage over yours. Zero told him. Oh, and what might that be? Underneath his mask, Lelouch gave his titular smirk. Mine can still fly. From one end, Optimus brought down his recovered Energon axe onto the ground while Colin plunged and activated her Surger Claw into the ice on the other side. This caused the ground underneath Starscream to shake and destabilize. Zero had managed to divert the Shinkiro's motor controls to the float system and fly backwards just as Alita, Suzaku, and Ogi fired Energon blasts, Varus shots, and Hadron blasts on the already destabilized ground, causing it to collapse completely. No. NNNNNOOOOOOOOO. Starscream screamed as he and his armor both plummeted into the newly formed chasm, one so deep that they couldn't even see the bottom. The Shinkiro landed back on the ground, still almost completely depowered as Optimus, Colin, Alita, Ogi, and Suzaku regrouped around him, all of them turning to face the remaining Decepticons of Thundercracker, Skybite, and Slipstream. 1 down, 3 to go. Alita glared. I'm sure most of you had already figured out what we're planning. Suzaku spoke to the Decepticons. But you didn't even bother to warn Starscream. He told us to stay out of it, so we did. Slipstream said with a cocky grin. It's not our fault he let his arrogance get the better of him again. No honor among cons, huh? Ogi glared. So, who wants to take the first shot? None of us, we're done here. Thundercracker answered, much to the hero's surprise. Even with Zero's nightmare appearing depowered, I'm doubtful the three of us will survive against Optimus Prime and his strongest followers. I agree. Skybite added. Starscream is still alive and the Apex armor intact. We have what we came here for, so we'll just take our leave. But you all still get to live, so we'll go and call this a draw. But don't get cocky. Slipstream warned. We might not be so merciful the next time we cross paths. The two Seekers and Sharkticon then transformed and flew away from the scene, leaving Alpha Team behind as Alita walked toward the hole and lightly kicked a rock down into it. They say it's a draw, but it sure doesn't feel like it. Colin said. How are we supposed to fight something like that Apex armor if our strongest weapons couldn't even damage it? We will find a way. Alita assured her. What's important is that we're all alive and we can go home. Agreed. Optimus turned to the Shinkiro as its cockpit opened up, and Zero stood up from it. Lelouch, you were able to identify the weaknesses of the Apex armor and exploit not only them but those of Starscream, creating a scenario in which we would all walk away as opposed to continuing a battle that was unwinnable. Nothing we had could have taken that armor from Starscream. It seemed like the logical choice. Lelouch said as his mask opened to reveal his face. But I'm a little more concerned about that Geass Canceller, and who else in the Decepticons may have one. Thundercracker said it was only a select few. Ogi said, maybe if we can compare notes with everyone else, we can at least get an idea of who might have one. But it's still a threat. Suzaku said. I even felt it wipe out that live command you gave me a while back, Lelouch. It's gone. Lelouch did find that somewhat troublesome, but it didn't sound as bad as Suzaku made it out to be. To be honest, I'm not sure you need it anymore, Suzaku. That got Suzaku's attention and everyone else. You've proven time again that you no longer intend to sacrifice yourself, you want to live of your own accord now. A smile formed on his face. I think it's safe to say you're finally free of your own guilt. Suzaku didn't quite expect Lelouch to say that. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized it was true. Lelouch really didn't give him the command to live since the Ark fled Japan's oceans some time back, and yet Suzaku continued to fight without feeling the instinctual need to fly headfirst and risk his life. For a long time, he truly wished to die to atone for killing his father, but now, after working for the true cause of freedom, fighting alongside his friends and making new ones, he really did feel free. And it felt good. He even looked to see the genuine and encouraging smiles of Optimus and Alita, and even those of Colin and Ogi as they stood up from their nightmares open cockpits. Even Colin gave a thumbs up. Thanks, I'll try not to let this freedom go to waste. Suzaku said as he thought about a friend of his who was no longer here. I promise. Dreadwing. I'm certain you won't. Optimus confirmed before using his comm. Optimus Prime to base, we require a ground bridge. He turned back to Lelouch. I will take the Shinkiro back to base as it does not appear to be functional. Optimus offered as a ground bridge portal appeared before them. Thank you. Lelouch nodded as the Gurren rolled up and Colin kept her cockpit open. I'll give you a ride. She offered her hand to him, which he accepted as he climbed from the Shinkiro's cockpit and into hers. Though Colin did catch Alita giving a knowing smirk in their direction, which she responded with her middle finger as the cockpit closed. Optimus transformed into his truck mode and hooked the Shinkiro up to its back like a trailer before moving into the portal, followed by Alita, the Lancelot and Gawain Narian. The Gurren was the last to enter. Colin, Lelouch began, sitting behind her as they traveled through the vortex. I've been thinking about what you said, about having a plan for my future. I still don't quite have one in the long term, at least not yet. But, when this war is over, and you start your plan to rebuild Japan, maybe I could join you. Colin looked back toward him. You want to help rebuild Japan? Yes. Lelouch nodded. For a long while, that place has been my home, mine and Nunnally's. It deserved so much better than what it got at the hands of Britannia and the Decepticons. I would love to see it filled with life once again. And I wouldn't mind spending my life there either, that is, if you would want me by your side during that time. He said, looking away slightly as his cheeks brightened a bit. Colin's eyes slowly widened. Did he just say he'd want to spend his life with her? While she did partially expect him to offer assistance in rebuilding Japan, she didn't expect him to say he wants to stay by her side even after it's all done. Her heartbeat increased quite a bit as Shell felt something warm in her chest. The idea of spending time with Lelouch, while not worrying about the fate of the world, did sound appealing to her. In fact, she loved the very idea of it. I'd like that, Colin admitted, looking away with a smile. Really? Lelouch asked in surprise. Really? She confirmed. You're a good person, Lelouch. One of the best I've ever met and, she looked away further, making sure he didn't see her smile and blush. I wouldn't mind the idea of, you and me, after the war's over. She felt a gentle grasp over her right hand, looking back to see Lelouch smiling down toward her as he held the back of her hand. The kind of smile he gave was the same kind he always gave Nunnally and even Euphemia, one of genuine care, respect, and even love. And seeing him extend that same smile toward her made Colin feel a kind of happiness she never felt before. She moved her hand around to hold Lelouch's back and squeeze it firmly as she smiled back at him. Meanwhile, on the ocean floor beneath the ice of which he fell, Starscream marched through the icy water, still clad in the Apex armor. He had just received a report from Thundercracker and the others as they had returned to the Nemesis. Starscream had also called for a ground bridge portal, which just opened in front of him, and he wasted no time in marching into it. Though he growled in fury at being tricked so easily by Zero once again, that did not take away the cruel joy he felt in acquiring the Apex armor. Though he was certain Megatron would try to take it from him the second he made it back, he was certain he could reacquire it later when he and Schneisel initiated their plan. Enjoy your short time alive, Zero, Prime, even you Megatron. Starscream said to himself. That time will be coming to an end real soon. Valley of Kings and Titans. Shockwave worked in his laboratory within the Geass Order, making final adjustments to the project before him. It appeared to be a large black nightmare frame, hooked up to a series of cables and energon tubes. The nightmare's legs were particularly bulky, indicating there might be more to them. It also appeared to have something of a tail-like feature emerging from its back with heavy-duty artillery on its shoulders, and even a weapon on its right arm that seemed a three-way cross between a shield, blade, and cannon. Shockwave pressed a command on the console he was working on, allowing the dark purple substance of dark energon to flow through the tubes and directly into the nightmare. Crystal-like plates upon the nightmare's shoulder glowed to life in the same color as the readings on the nightmare came in. Dark energon infusion completely successful. Shockwave reported. The organic specimen has taken well to it with the cybernetic enhancements. Unit designation Thanatos now fully online. He pressed a few more key commands on the console. Trial successful. Commence final procedures to bring the Nemesis project online. The Decepticon scientist received an alert on the communications center within his laboratory, which he was quick to answer, bringing the screen up to the Decepticon who contacted him. Shockwave, my team and I are ready to be deployed to the coordinates of the Yakin relic. Steeljaw reported. Is Shin ready? The specimen known as Shin Hyuga Shang is indeed ready for combat and will be deployed to your location shortly. You will meet him there. Shockwave replied. Good, can't wait to see how your friend is acclimating into our ranks. Steeljaw sneered. Within the unit designated as Thanatos, was the human known as Shin Hyuga Shang. Though he had very little humanity in him left, both emotionally and physically. Nearly all his organic biology had been replaced and augmented with Cybertronian robotics, including half his face being cybernetic, which connected him and his brain directly to the Thanatos, not too dissimilar from many of Shockwave's other experiments. Only this time, Shin was alive and now had dark energon flowing through his veins. Shin's eyes opened, revealing himself to be in a dark void, his body appearing to be completely human. As his eyes opened, the red glow of the Geass emblem was visible for all to see, except that there didn't appear to be any other individual in this void. What is this? Where am I? You know exactly where you are. Shin gasped, recognizing the dark and distorted voice. He looked out in front of him to see a skull with a Geass emblem embedded into its forehead appear before him with an evil laugh. It's you. He had seen that very same skull before, on the very night he killed his own father and received his power. How intriguing, Belith said. This is the very first I've ever met the same person twice. All of your predecessors have only seen me once before falling into the eternal darkness of their soul. I see, so were in my mind, Shin said before gasping in realization. I remember now, the images all came back to him in flashes. The battle at Castle Weisswolf, the castle falling down upon him, being pulled out of the rubble, and even being taken apart and put back together by alien technology. Akito, Zero, the Autobots, all those fools still live, don't they? This accursed world still lives. Shin said as a scowl formed on his face. Indeed, they do, this world still thrives. Belith replied. Perhaps you'd like another chance to see it burn. The hatred within your soul has only grown, and I would see that hatred further fuel the flames that will consume all. You can grant me more power? Shin asked. I can, through the use of the dark blood that now flows through your being. Belith revealed. I have done so recently, using the blood of darkness to channel my own power and give birth to something more destructive. His power comes from his ability to instill fear into others, and he now uses it to bring this world to its knees. Would you like that very same power? A serious look formed on Shin's face. Before I answer I must know, who are you? What are you? Who I am, no longer matters. What I am, you could say I am the face of another. Belith began. There is an evil in this universe, an evil that has existed since its inception. It is dormant for now, but it will awaken soon. Perhaps the actions of you and the other who wields my power will only hasten its awakening. Who knows? But I am merely an extension of this evil. Once it awakens, I may disappear to its will, for all or nothing compared to it. This evil, will it destroy this accursed world? Can I use its power to bring about the end? Yes. Then I accept, Shin declared. All I seek, what I've always sought, is the destruction of all. Then take this power, the power of Dark Geass. With that declaration, the skull's mouth opened as the Geass emblem on its forehead changed from red to dark purple. Dark flames of the same color shot out of Belith's mouth and completely engulfed Shin. Inside the Thanatos, Shin's eyes opened, the right side of his face being normal while the left side was mechanical. His right eye and left optic both shined purple, the Dark Geass emblem glowing brightly as a malevolent smile formed on the madman's face. A ground bridge portal opened in the Egyptian desert, the hot and scorching sun beaming down on the near white sand as the vehicle modes of Sideswipe, Grindcore, and Strongarm emerged from the portal, followed by the Alexanders of the Black Wyvern Squad and the Tristan Divider. The portal closed as the Nightmares and Autobots all transformed into their humanoid forms to observe the area around them. Wow, Sideswipe said, seemingly in awe. I've never seen a place so boring. Boring? Ayano questioned. We're in the middle of freaking Egypt. How is that boring? Well, there's nothing around but sand and rocks. Sideswipe commented. If you guys think all that is cool, that's your thing. Me, not so much. Yeah, I was kinda hoping to see the pyramids. Gino seemed to agree. Or that giant cat god thing. You mean the Sphinx? Ryo asked. Yeah, that's it. The cat god thing. Gino replied. The Sphinx is a mythological creature that has the head of a human, the body of a lion, and the wings of a falcon. It's not a god in Egyptian mythology. Layla said. Yukia chuckled. Weren't you a knight of the round, Gino? And weren't those guys supposed to be like Britannia's elite? As in they know everything. He chuckled. I never really paid much attention in those kinds of classes. Gino replied. Plus, Britannian elite schools don't really teach anything outside of Britannian culture, which is kinda stupid in my opinion. Sounds like those Britannian guys need punching. Sucks I showed up after the cons took over, I would have had lots of fun laying the hurt on those punks. Grindcore stated. Now that sounds like a fun time. Sideswipe smirked. Hey, let's focus back on the mission. Strongarm got everyone's attention. We need to retrieve a potential weapon of mass destruction before our enemies do. She's right. Akito agreed. Commander, what's our heading? Layla looked to the data on the screen of her Alexander. Several kilometers north-northeast. We should be there soon if we move now. Then let's go. Akito nodded as the Alexanders transformed in their insect modes, followed by the Autobots in their vehicle modes before driving off. The Tristan Divider then transformed as well, albeit more slowly than a Cybertronian would, resembling something of a shuttle before flying off to catch up with the others. Alright, looks like Delta Team is on the ground. One of the former officers from the W0 unit said as they monitored the mission progress of this particular team back on Horai Island. How fitting that this group of officers and scientists were all the same people from the W0 squad. It only made sense given they worked with them the longest. Scan indicates no enemy signals so far. They are heading the coordinates and should be there momentarily. Claus leaned back against the wall, taking a sip of his flask with a content smile. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Oh my, Claus looked to the side to see Lloyd casually walking in to join them with Cecile right behind them. So, this is how the Wyverns operate. Not bad, I see. Can I help you, Mr. Asplund? Claus asked. Oh, don't mind me, just observing. Lloyd answered. Which is translation for him being bored. Cecile said with lowered eyelids. There are other missions going on right now. Claus told him. Maybe you might want to bother some of the other teams. Well, I did hear some very interesting things from Little Nina about how the infamous W0 operated with their nightmares, so I'm a little curious. Lloyd said as he walked toward Sophie's station and noticed the data on her screen before taking a quick read of it. Oh, neural links, Now that's quite interesting. Sophie could tell that Lloyd wasn't planning on leaving anytime soon, so she decided to humor him with an explanation. In the past, our unit has attempted to link the minds of our pilots together through their nightmares in order to better coordinate the missions. It hasn't gone particularly well. I did hear that the so-called Ghost of Hannibal went rabid on many of those missions, as did those who went with him. Lloyd put in. That wasn't Akito's fault. Anna quickly stated. He was under the effect of a Geass at the time. From his brother? Cecile asked. She remembered Suzaku telling her and Lloyd about Shinhyuga Shang and their battle against him at Castle Weisswolf, as well as the existence of his Geass. That's right, Anna confirmed. We had to deactivate the neural links just to avoid Akito's, to avoid the power from affecting the other pilots. Apparently Akito was able to overcome it thanks to his own willpower, with pretty little Chera's help too. Claus added with a slight laugh. Who would have thought the power of friendship would come in handy during wartime? Can't say I'm a fan of that particular trope right there, Lloyd said as he continued to observe the data readings. But it seems you've gotten the link back online. With Shang gone and Akito's overcome of that accursed power, it's safe to say we don't have to worry about that issue anymore. Sophie replied. And maybe with Cybertronian technology, we could be close to a breakthrough. This once again brought her up her hopes that her comatose husband could one day recover. He was currently in one of Horai Island's most secure labs, his body receiving proper nutrients and treatment to get it back into proper physical shape for when he recovers, but he was still comatose for now. Hope you don't mind me hanging around then for this little mission, Lloyd said as he leaned in close, a bit too close for comfort for Sophie. Britannia never came up with anything quite like this. They were more focused on finding ways to kill people. You say that so casually, Joe muttered. How have these guys put up with this man for so long? Hilda wondered to Chloe. I guess we're about to find out, Chloe replied. As Cecile sighed in mental exhaustion from Lloyd's usual antics but was surprised to see Claus handing her his flask with a sympathetic smile. An exhaustive partner. I know the feeling, Claus said, briefly reminded of his ex and the falling out they had. No thanks, I don't drink, Cecile said, though she smiled slightly in appreciation of his efforts of consolation. But I'll also admit I'd like to know more about these neural links. Like Lloyd said, Britannia never devised anything like this. Well, I'd be happy to explain it to you, Anna offered. It doesn't seem like Layla and the others are in trouble right now, so we can talk. Meanwhile, back in Egypt, Delta Team continued to move through the desert in their respective vehicle modes, following the coordinates to where they hoped the relic would be located. Their trail happened to take them down a certain path through the canyons, noticing several large sculptures and tomb openings carved into the rocky walls. Whoa, those are some big guys right there, Grindcore said upon seeing large statues of the pharaohs that were carved from the stone. Didn't know humans can grow that big. We can't, Akito said simply. Those are only statues. Hey Layla, where exactly are we going? What is this place? Ayano asked. Layla looked around from her cockpit and seemed to recognize this place. Though she'd never been here before, she remembered reading about it in school. I don't believe it, this is the Valley of the Kings. Whoa, seriously? Ryo questioned. That's freaking cool. The Valley of the Kings? Gino asked. I'm not particularly familiar with that term either. Strongarm added. The Valley of the Kings, as per its name suggests, is a valley upon which several pharaohs and powerful nobles were entombed, all from the 18th to 20th dynasties of ancient Egypt. Layla explained. This is 500 years of history of one of the ancient world's greatest kingdoms. Okay, that's pretty cool. Gino beamed. They must have been pretty big guys to get tombs this big carved for them. Grindcore said. Egyptian pharaohs considered themselves the most important people in their world, saying the sun rises and sets for them. Yukiya said. Honestly, they're not too different from Britannian nobility, you know, considering they're all slave owners. Okay, I like these guys less, now. Grindcore stated. So, it's basically a valley where a bunch of dead guys are buried. Sideswipe summed up. Gee, try not to sound so excited, Ayano said sarcastically. Look, I get these might have been important guys and all, and some of these tombs do look pretty cool, but I don't see the appeal in glorifying a bunch of dead people. Sideswipe said. Seems kinda like a wasted effort. Ryo snorted slightly. Hey, you wanna know how they bury these people? They rip out their guts and put them in jars, saying it's supposed to guide them to the afterlife or something like that. Okay, that is kinda messed up. Sideswipe said. Wait, seriously? Gino questioned. That's why they make people into mummies. I wouldn't say that, Layla began to explain. However, as they continued to talk, Akito began to feel his head throb slightly. He tried to ignore it for the most part, brushing it off as a minor headache. But he had to stop his Alexander Liberté for a second as he felt the pulsing sensation in his head grow even deeper. Akito? Layla asked with concern as the rest of the team stopped, the Autobots transforming as they addressed their companion. Hey, you alright man? Gino asked. I feel something. Akito's vision blurred for a second as he tried to focus his senses. If you need medical attention, we could call for a ground bridge, Strongarm offered. I'm fine. Suddenly, a jolt shot through Akito's mind, causing the throb to increase significantly, leading him to scream in pain. An alarm sounded on the screens, alerting everyone present. Akito's brainwaves just spiked. What happened? Sophie questioned as even Claus, Lloyd, and Cecile were alerted by this sudden development. His brainwaves are erratic, like before. Joe started to look worried. No, this isn't like before, Anna said as she looked at the readings. This looks worse. Enemy units detected, Sarah announced, catching the red dots on the radar screen. We have confirmed of 4 Decepticon signals incoming on Delta Team's location and something else there too. Something else? What is it? Claus asked. I've never seen anything like this before. Olivia reported with concern. I don't think it's Cybertronian, but it's not reading like an enemy nightmare either. Can we get some kind of energon reading from it? Cecile asked. It might not identify the unit, but it could give us an idea of what we're dealing with. Hang on, Hilda tried to get a reading, but was surprised at the results. That's not possible, there's nothing. What? Sophie questioned as everyone was shocked. No energon readings on it whatsoever. Even Chloe was shocked. But, that can't be right, she gasped slightly as Lloyd put a hand on her shoulder and looked at the reading with an uncharacteristically serious expression. Run it again with a full spectrum analysis. Scan for any and all kinds of energy. Though surprised by his unusually serious tone, they ran a full spectrum analysis, looking for any other type of energy source other than energon. They were able to get a reading, which was pulled up on the screen. We've got something, Anna looked at it. But, what is this? Anna, Claus asked. I've never seen this type of energy source before. She stated. We have, Cecile said as her face hardened, looking at the data herself before glancing toward her superior. Lloyd. I know, for one of the fewest times in his life, a sinking feeling formed in Lloyd's chest as his eyes narrowed with fear. It's dark energon. The Thanatos flew through the air at high speeds, the crystals along its side glowing, gunning straight towards Delta Team, with Grindcore being the first to notice it. Incoming. His warning came just in time as the Thanatos, heavy artillery opened fire, shooting devastating blasts on the ground just as the whole group began to scatter. Strongarm, Ryo, Ayano, and Yukiya were the first to open fire with their respective long-range weapons, but the Thanatos flew with such speed and agility that not a single shot hit. That thing is way too fast. We can't hit it, Yukiya exclaimed. Even his Alexander Valiant's long-distanced linear cannon couldn't get a good shot in. I got M. Gino flew in the Tristan divider to intercept the enemy unit. No, don't do it, Akito shouted in a panic, something Layla noticed. But it was too late. The Tristan divider had already caught up with the Thanatos, drawing its dual MVS blades as Gino tried to bring down one of them, but the Thanatos was quick to block it with its shield before spinning around to slash its tail weapon at the Tristan, striking it with such force that it was sent crashing into a tomb statue, rattling Gino inside. The Thanatos flew to hover above the remainder of Delta Team as they had their weapons primed and ready to shoot it down. Hello Akito. Did you miss me? Everyone present, Autobot and human, had their eyes widened in shock as they recognized the voice. But none were more horrified than Akito himself. And no, it can't be, not you. What's wrong? A small opening formed on the Thanatos, chest to reveal the cybernetic Shin Hyuga Shang looking down on all of them with a malevolent grin. Why not come and give your big brother a hug? Shin, Hyuga, Shang. Layla stuttered, her eyes wavering in terror. In the flesh, so to speak. Shang replied. I see you brought all your friends, Akito. I'm glad. We didn't get the chance to properly acquaint ourselves before. You're supposed to be dead. Sideswipe told him. We brought a freaking castle down on you. Yes you did, Shin said in a mix of a growl and a laugh. But Decepticon technology is truly amazing. Thanks to them, I live to terrify another day. And he is not the only one. The group turned around to a rocky hill to see Steeljaw arrive alongside Thunderhoof, Fracture, and Underbite. What a nice reunion this has turned out to be. Steeljaw greeted with a sinister smile of his own. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Yukia's eyes narrowed as they all recognized this particular team of Decepticons. The wolf pack is back. So, you guys are looking for a rematch, huh? Fine with me, Ryo said as his Alexander Valiant drew its axe weapon. Me too. Time to get this brawl started. Grindcore pounded his fists together. For once, we agree. Steeljaw said as he was the first to attack, leaping at the group as they opened fire on him. He landed in between the Alexander Valiants of Ryo, Ayano, and Yukia before sweeping his tail to knock all three nightmares down. He spotted Layla's Alexander and went after her as she moved back to gain some distance while Strongarm transformed to catch up and intercept. Akito gasped as he saw the Thanatos fly down towards him. Being propelled by pure fear, he shifted his Alexander Liberté back into its insect mode and scurried away with Shang in pursuit, though Gino had pulled the Tristan divider from the rubble and flew in pursuit. The other Decepticons went on the attack as well, with Fracture deploying Eraser and Dive Bomb in their missile mode before they transformed and dropped down on Ayano's Nightmare, while Fracture clashed with Sideswipe, colliding their respective blades. Thunderhoof charged directly at Ryo, who charged forward in response with his Alexander Valiant to clash his axe against Thunderhoof's antlers, while Grindcore went straight for Underbite, with Yukia shooting the large Decepticon with his long-ranged weapon. Steeljaw was closing in on Layla as her Alexander turned around, transformed to its humanoid mode, and opened fire with its rifle. Steeljaw had already jumped over the gunfire and landed on the Alexander to pin it down even as Layla tried to draw its Uruna edge knives from its arms, but Steeljaw had its arms pinned to the ground. I remember you. Steeljaw sneered while Layla grimaced inside her cockpit. Layla Bryskow. Think that little nightmare makes you a soldier now, little girl. Let me show you just how wrong you. Suddenly, Strongarm's vehicle mode rammed Steeljaw in the side and sent him tumbling off Layla's Alexander, where he rolled across the ground but quickly recovered with a growl as Strongarm pointed her Energon crossbow at him. I'd advise you to stay where you are, Steeljaw. Strongarm glared as the Alexander next to her recovered. Thank you, Strongarm. Layla smiled in appreciation before turning to glare at the wolf-like Decepticon in front of her. I may not be an ace pilot, but I am a soldier, and a Black Knight. I'll do whatever I can to protect my friends and this world from the likes of you. Steeljaw growled again. Let's see you put those words into actions then. He leapt at them with his razor-sharp claws. Eraser and Dive Bomb moved quickly across the ground to avoid the machine gun fire of Ayano's Alexander Valiant and were quick to close the distance, prompting Ayano to draw her Nightmare's sword in its right hand and extend the knife hidden in the second hand. She swung both blades at the mini-con pair, but they were far too quick to land a decent hit in, even transforming into their missile modes to fly around and avoid her slashes, much to her irritation. Hold still, you little shitheads. Ayano shouted, only for her Alexander Valiant to be tripped up by Dive Bomb's missile mode before Eraser appeared and transformed to land onto the vulnerable cockpit. Let's crack this thing open and see the soft fleshy inside. Eraser chuckled alongside Dive Bomb as he appeared. But before they could begin prying the cockpit open, both mini-cons were sent flying by a swipe from Sideswipe's sword, allowing Ayano to recover. Thanks, Sideswipe. You can thank me by helping me out with this guy. Sideswipe replied as Fracture charged him, drawing his large weapon to bring down onto the red Autobot, which Sideswipe blocked with his sword. But this allowed Ayano to go on the offensive, swinging both her Alexander's longsword and short knife at Fracture, forcing him to guard up against her relentless attacks, which Sideswipe added with his own blade. Ryo's Alexander Valiant swung his axe at Thunderhoof, but he ducked underneath the swing and used his antlers to ram Ryo's Nightmare and hoist it up to send it flying into the air, but before it got very far, Thunderhoof grabbed the Alexander Valiant's foot and slammed it down onto the ground. But Ryo acted quickly and transformed his Nightmare, freeing himself from Thunderhoof's grasp and fired point blank with his machine guns, forcing Thunderhoof to cross his arms and defend himself as Ryo backed away to gain some distance. Yukia's Alexander kept its fair distance as well as he fired explosive shots from his long-distance rifle at Underbite, but this only seemed to irritate the large Decepticon as he charged full speed at the smaller Nightmare, prompting Yukiya to fall back, but Underbite quickly transformed and drove after him. "Come back here. You're too small to even be an appetizer for me, a little bug," Underbite exclaimed, but he was quickly rammed in the side by Grindcore's monster truck mode, which he drove into a nearby rock mound. "Then how about you pick on somebody your own size, muscle mouth?" Grindcore stated as he pressed harder in his vehicle mode, trying to push Underbite through the rock. But Underbite transformed back and bit down on the side of Grindcore's vehicle mode, causing him to scream in pain. But this gave Yukiya the chance to come in, his Alexander standing on top of the rock mound and aiming his rifle point blank at Underbite's head. "You hungry, huh? Well, eat this." Yukiya fired, creating an explosion powerful enough to force Underbite to let go, freeing Grindcore, who then transformed and brought his fists down onto Underbite's face. However, while the members of both parties appeared evenly matched for the most part, Akito didn't have as much luck with his cybernetic half-brother, the Thanatos, flying like a bat out of hell to catch the fleeing Alexander Liberté. Shang landed his nightmare directly in front of Akito and swung its blade, causing Akito to gasp in fear as he instinctively transformed his nightmare to bring up its blaze luminous shield, but the force of the impact was enough to knock the smaller nightmare back, causing it to bounce on the ground. Not even giving it a chance to recover, Shang fired his heavy artillery at the seemingly down nightmare, but Akito proved quick enough, pulling down on the controls, ducking his Alexander Liberté as the energy blasts flew over and exploded behind him. "Akito, why run? We have much to catch up on." Shang flew his Thanatos forward to close the gap. "No, stay away," Akito gasped as he retreated once more. He was terrified, more so than he had ever been in his life. It wasn't just the fact that his psychopathic half-brother was somehow back from the dead, but the presence he carried was far different than before. It was much worse now. He could feel the darkness, the evil. The closer Shang got, the more Akito felt it in his mind. It was just like when Shang got into his head with his Geass command, but he thought he had overcome it. So why was this happening to him? The Thanatos appeared over the retreating Alexander Liberté, but the Tristan Divider suddenly came in to kick the more heavily armored nightmare down. "Actio, are you okay?" Gino questioned. "Gino. So, the Knight of Three Sides with the greatest enemies his empire have ever known," Shang commented as the Thanatos recovered. "That is, aside from the Decepticons that overthrew it. How does it feel to be a traitor, Sir Weinberg?" "You're one to talk." Gino glared. "I know who you are and what you've done. But I don't get why. Why do all of this? Why join the cons? Why would you want to destroy the world? Why try to kill your own brother?" Shang chuckled. "I'm surprised a Britannian would ask something like that. Even if I told you my reason, you wouldn't be satisfied. There are just some people who will never understand each other." The Thanatos flew directly at the Tristan Divider, clashing their short-ranged weapons midair. "I thought I had a reason for the things I did," Shang explained as he and Gino engaged in their aerial duel, with Gino on the defensive. "To spare my loved ones the fate of living in a cruel world, to destroy all that I hate," but as it turns out, the Tristan pulled back, only for the Thanatos to appear behind it at faster speed and slam it down toward the ground by bringing its shield blade cannon weapon down onto its back. "I really don't need a reason." He grinned evilly. He prepared to fire his cannon at the downed Tristan, but Akito's Alexander Valiant shot up into the air, thanks to its high-speed propulsion wings for something akin to a jump and ram into the Thanatos' weaponized arm, causing it to misfire. "Stop this, now!" Akito shouted as the Alexander Liberté pushed the Thanatos down toward the ground. It appeared down as Akito drew his Nightmare's katana, but the Thanatos' tail suddenly appeared to slash upward and knock the Liberté back before the Thanatos recovered and grabbed the smaller Nightmare by its shoulders. "Come on out, little brother, I've got something to show you," Shang said as he began to squeeze on the Liberté's shoulders. Realizing he couldn't escape this grip, Akito opened his cockpit, ready to draw his gun and shoot down Shin the second he saw an opening. However, the second Shang exposed his cybernetic face, his dark Geass activated. "Experience true terror, Akito." The dark purple sigil flew directly in Akito's eyes, causing a dark purple ring to form. But suddenly, across the battlefield, the same thing happened to Ryo, Ayano, and Yukiya, each of them gasping as they felt the dark presence invade their minds, dark purple rings glowing in each of their own eyes as well. Massive spike detected in their neural nets. Claus, Lloyd, and the others were alerted by this sudden development as alarms sounded on the computers around them. Akito's brainwaves are erratic, and somehow, it's spreading to Ryo, Yukiya, and Ayano. Just like before, Anna muttered as Sophie pulled up the data to see the link connecting between all 4 pilots. "No, this is worse," she said with distress. "The way their brainwaves are spiking, it's not just an adrenaline rush, it's almost as if they've been forced into a perpetual nightmare." That revelation caused Lloyd and Cecile to look toward each other in surprise, a dread realization coming in mind for both of them. "Perpetual nightmare? What in the hell is going on?" Claus questioned. "Correct if I'm wrong, but is one of the enemies we are facing Shinhyuga Shang?" Lloyd asked. "That seems to be the case," Claus confirmed. "Just don't know how that maniac is even alive. And he does have a Geass, correct?" Lloyd continued. "We did confirm that, yes." Anna nodded. "This kind of thing happened before, didn't it?" Lloyd asked once again. Shang used his Geass on Akito, leading him to have his little rage fits, which spread to the others through this neural link thing. "A basic summation, do you have some kind of theory?" Sophie asked. "We know Dark Energon is involved here," Lloyd explained. "If I had to guess, the cons must have somehow infused Shang with that crazy stuff and it enhanced his Geass, making it somehow even worse than what he had before. Just like with King Khan." "Lloyd, please don't tell me, you don't think he has the same kind of power as Megatron, do you?" Cecile questioned. That caught the attention of everyone else in the room as a serious expression formed on Lloyd's face. "Yes, Cecile, I do believe that is what we're dealing with here. Dark Geass. Get back. Just get back," Ryo screamed in hallucinatory fashion, the dark purple rings in his eyes glowing even brighter. He swung his Alexander's axe frantically, even though Thunderhoof was out of his range, though the Khan couldn't help but look in confusion. Ayano screamed as well, holding her head as she curled up in her cockpit in terror. "No, please, go away," she cried, tears flowing down from her closed eyes. Sideswipe noticed her Alexander freeze up. "Ayano, what's going on? Snap out of it." He was struck down by a slice from Fracture, as his mini-con partners rejoined with him. "Don't know what's going on, but I like it." Fracture grinned. "And no, stay back. Stay away from me," Yukiya cried out as he shot his Nightmare's rifle in all directions, creating several explosions across the area, even one in between Grindcore and Underbite. "Hey, we're on the same side," Grindcore complained, unaware of the ground below him starting to crack apart. Akito stood up from his cockpit completely frozen, a look of pure horror glued to his face along with the dark purple rings in his eyes, causing Shin to grin even more. "Hey, Akito, what are you doing? Move." Gino tried to get up, but the Thanatos cannons turned upwards and back over the shoulders to fire rapid blasts at the Tristan, sending it rolling backwards. Shin then detached his cybernetic body from the Thanatos, revealing that nearly his entire body appeared mechanical, save for the right side of his face. He had even lost all his hair as there appeared to be some plugs even on the side and top of his head. He leapt onto the Thanatos, right arm as it kept a solid grip on the Alexander Liberté as he walked toward his brother. "I don't exactly know what you're seeing right now, little brother. But I'm certain it must be horrifying." As chaos continued to ensue across the battlefield, Layla happened to glance in the direction of Akito and gasped at what she saw. The monster known as Shinhyuga Shang was approaching the young man she loved, likely to end his life. "Akito." Layla drove her Alexander as fast as she could to his location. "Layla, wait." Strongarm tried to go after her, but Steeljaw had knocked her down with a punch. "I'll be certain you truly die, this time," Shin said as a blade popped up from his right arm, standing just in front of his brother. "Goodbye, Akito. I'll be certain to send all your friends to join you, soon." Layla gasped as it seemed like she wouldn't make it in time. No, she couldn't accept that. She wouldn't accept it. Even with her nightmare moving at its top speed, Layla opened her cockpit as she desperately called out to him. "Akito." As she screamed, the sigil of her blue Geass formed in not only her left eye, but her right eye as well, manifesting in both. Akito gave a sudden gasp as the ring in his eyes turned from dark purple to blue, but just as Shang brought down his blade, the entire ground around them began to shake. Massive cracks formed all over the battlefield, spreading across the ground. This was the result of the destabilization caused by Yukiya's constant shooting, even now as he continued to fire, which only seemed to make it worse. What? Steeljaw questioned, only to look in surprise as the ground collapsed. Yukiya's Alexander was the first to fall with grindcore right behind him, followed by Ryo's, Ayano's, and Sideswipe. Fracture, Underbite, and Thunderhoof were just far enough away to transform and drive away, avoiding the ground that collapsed underneath them a second later. Steeljaw noticed the same thing with the ground near him and drove away as well in his vehicle mode just as Strongarm fell. Layla was the next to fall. Seeing the destabilization spreading to his location, Shang only scowled as he leapt back into the Thanatos, which hooked itself back up to him automatically before letting go of Aikido and his Alexander, flying away while letting his brother and his nightmare fall into the abyss, with Gino and the Tristan Divider being the last. It then all came to a stop, revealing only a large dust cloud, which began to slowly fade away as the Decepticons and Thanatos regrouped together. What just happened? Fracture questioned. The dust had almost completely cleared to reveal a massive hole in the ground, one so deep that it was almost impossible to see the bottom. Nothing but a dark abyss appeared before them. Steeljaw was the first to inspect it. Somehow this ground was hollow. The shooting must have destabilized it, creating this sinkhole. That would be impossible, Shin said. There are no naturally formed tunnels in this area. Obviously, you ain't right about that, Thunderhoof told him. I do not believe this to be a natural phenomenon, Steeljaw said as he inspected the ground. Something was dug here, maybe a long time ago. So, we going after them? Underbite asked. Let's finish them off. No, we need to retrieve the relic, that is our top priority. Steeljaw instructed. If any of them survived, we'll come back and deal with them later. Hey, maybe we can find out what this fancy relic can do by testing it on them. Fracture grinned. Now that sounds like a fun time. Thunderhoof smirked as well. Then let us retrieve our prize. Steeljaw instructed, prompting Underbite, Fracture, and Thunderhoof to transform and resume their trek toward the coordinates. The wolf-like Decepticon turned back toward the Thanatos. You coming, my friend? I'll be with you shortly, Shin replied. Steeljaw then transformed and drove away. Shin took one last moment to look down into the pit. You live for now, Aikido. But I promise, you will not leave this desert alive. The Thanatos flew away to rejoin the rest of his team. Layla. Her eyes slowly opened, the sound of static communications stirring her awake. Layla groaned as she pulled herself up, looking around to see she was still in her nightmare's cockpit. Layla, it's Anna. Do you read me? Yes Anna, I hear you, I read you, Layla replied, shaking the cobwebs from her head as she tried to get her Alexander back up and running. Thank God, she could hear Anna breathe a huge sigh of relief. You and the others just disappeared for a second, but I think we got your location now. Are the others nearby? Layla asked urgently as her nightmare sprang back to life, bringing up visuals of the area around her. Her now active Alexander appeared in a dark cave, with Grindcore, Sideswipe, Strongarm, along with the Tristan Divider, Alexander Valiance operated by Ryo, Yukiya, and Ayano, and even the Alexander Liberté all scattered around and appearing unresponsive. Aikido. Layla opened her cockpit. Upon seeing that his nightmare was close to hers, the cockpit opened, and Aikido lying inside it as he seemed unconscious as well. She leapt from her cockpit and toward his nightmare, quickly climbing up into it as she tried to shake him awake. Aikido. Wake up. His eyes flickered open, revealing no glow. He was no longer the effect of any Geass. Layla. She wasted no time in hugging him. Aikido. You're okay. Thank goodness. He slowly reached his arms to return the embrace as well, happy that he was out of that nightmare and in the arms of someone he truly trusted. A series of groans could be heard as the Autobots were the first to pull themselves up. My head, Grindcore groaned. What just happened? Sideswipe asked as he stood up, turning on the headlights attached to his chest to provide some form of illumination with Strongarm doing the same. The ground somehow collapsed. I didn't know this area of Earth had any subterranean levels. She commented. Hey, are we dead yet? They heard Ryo's voice as his Alexander's cockpit opened up, allowing him to stand up as he pulled out a flashlight. Ayano, Yukiya, and Gino did the same as well, opening their cockpits and standing up with flashlights of their own. No fire and brimstone, so we're not in hell. Yukiya commented. Yeah, spare me the thought of sharing the afterlife with you. Ayano told him, causing Yukiya to give a half smirk. Hey, we're all alive. Gino exclaimed with a grin. That's good, right? Can someone explain what the hell just happened back there? Ayano questioned. We were in the middle of a fight and then, she shivered, remembering the horrible vision she saw, the image of her family being slaughtered in front of her. It was almost like, I was being drowned. Ryo said, a cold sweat going down his body. Not in water but, just darkness, I couldn't see, I couldn't breathe. It felt like there were 1,000 daggers in my back. Yukiya's eyes shook as well. Like everyone around me was trying to kill me, and, I could have sworn I heard laughter, like the kind kids do when they're having fun. I may have an explanation for that. Lloyd's voice came in from all their communications, both nightmares and Autobots. Your old buddy Shang has a dark Geass. That got all their attention. The same kind of power Megatron has. How is that possible? Strongarm questioned. Dark Energon. Sideswipe assumed. And we know that whack job Shang had a Geass too, guess it must have mixed well with him. But wasn't he only looking at Akito? How was anyone else affected? Gino asked. Probably from that neural link. Lloyd told them. That same thing that happened to all of you in Slonim, only more trauma-enduing than bloodthirsty. What he means to say is, that Shang's power has increased thanks to this dark energon substance, and while it was directed toward Akito specifically, the neural link and possibly the same experience as before, connected Ryo, Ayano, and Yukiya to him, thereby affecting all four of you at once. Sophie translated. Well, that's just great. As if that guy wasn't a pain before. Grindcore said with a scowl. It doesn't matter. Akito stood up, trying to shake off what his brother did to him. We still have a mission, and we are going to complete it. Layla couldn't help but look at Akito with concern. As he was Shin's primary target, he likely got the worst of it. He may seem fine on the outside, but she could tell that there was a great deal of pain on the inside, and he was simply hiding it, something she knew that he was all too good at. Are you sure? Cecile asked. We could call for assistance. No, Akito's right, Layla said. With Steeljaw and Shang here, we can't afford to waste any more time. We need to retrieve the relic. Got any idea how we're gonna get it if we're buried alive down here? Yukiya asked. Gino, can't you fly back up? Sideswipe asked the former Knight of Three, who was already at the controls of the Tristan. No, motor controls are still functional, but it looks like my float system's shot. No flying for me, Gino said disappointedly. That may not be necessary. Claus spoke up. Claus, Layla asked. Based on the data we're seeing here, the coordinates are actually straight ahead for you. He explained. This relic is buried here and you have a straight path to it. Well, isn't that lucky? Lloyd said in his usual tone. Guess Shang's terror-inducing power worked in our favor. Try not to sound so pleased about that. Ayano told him. Hey, I'm a sociopath. I was born without any empathy. Lloyd replied. That explains a lot. Sideswipe commented. Layla was the first to try and get a read on the coordinates and was able to detect the relic with her Alexander's radar. She turned her nightmare in one specific direction and shined the Alexander's lights, revealing a large tunnel that seemed to lead them to their destination. The others all did the same, shining their lights in that direction. Well, that's convenient, Gino said. I don't know about that, Strongarm said as she walked toward the wall of the tunnel, rubbing her hand down it. These walls, they're perfectly carved, this tunnel isn't a natural formation. Someone built it. Someone. Who? Ryo asked. We can find out later. Akito said. For now, let's use it to our advantage. I'll take point. He moved his Alexander forward into the tunnel, with Layla close behind him. The Autobots transformed into their respective vehicle modes, the other Alexanders in their insect modes as they and the Tristian drove deeper into the darkened tunnel. Meanwhile, back on the surface, the Thanatos flew over the vehicle modes belonging to the Decepticons of Steeljaw's pack before they arrived at their destination, a stone temple that appeared carved into the large rocks before them. The Decepticons transformed as the Thanatos landed with Steeljaw taking out his scanner to confirm their location. This is it. The relic is here. It's inside that musty old temple. Fracture asked. That happens to be the temple of Hatshepsut, the second historically confirmed female pharaoh of ancient Egypt. Shin informed. She'd practically established the wealth of the 18th dynasty. Who cares about some dead meatbag? Thunderhoof replied. We got a weapon to dig up. Oh yeah, time to tear this place up. Underbite was ready to tear down the temple in front of them, but Steeljaw raised his claw to stop him. Actually, the relic isn't inside the temple, but rather buried directly underneath us. Steeljaw revealed before turning to the Chompazoid. So, Underbite, if you would. The largest Cybertronian present immediately got to work as he used his massive mouth and claws to begin digging into the ground. We should hurry, if in the event the enemy were to discover our location. Steeljaw said. You think the bots and their pets are still kicking? Fracture questioned. We saw how deep that pit was. Maybe a bot or two might have survived. But those meat bags pals of theirs ain't gonna be so lucky. Thunderhoof added. It would be wise not to underestimate that group of humans, particularly Akito. Shin replied, agreeing with Steeljaw. My brother has always been damn near impossible to kill. Meanwhile, while the whole of Delta Team continued their trek through the underground tunnel, Lloyd, Claus, and all the others back on Horai Island were seeing everything through the visuals provided by the nightmares. This definitely not a natural cave formation. Cecile said. Yes, it's far too straightforward, no inclines or declines, and it's carved out almost perfectly. Lloyd added. As if it was made specifically for vehicles to traverse. I'm pretty sure Cleopatra didn't have a car to drive around in. Claus put in. It might not be natural, but I doubt this is human-made either. Anna said. There's also the fact that this path leads directly to the relic we're supposed to retrieve. Sophie added as well. I highly doubt that's a coincidence. So, what are you all saying, exactly? Joe asked, looking back. Perhaps this tunnel was Cybertronian made. Lloyd assumed, getting everyone's attention. Cybertronian, Hilda questioned. But weren't these relics launched from Cybertron during the final days of the war? Chloe also questioned. To keep them from Decepticon hands, yes. Cecile confirmed. But these Yakin relics weren't the only alien artifacts we've found here. There was an Energon harvester found in Greece. Which would mean that Cybertronians have been to Earth before. Anna followed along. What exactly does this mean? I don't really follow. Claus said. It means, my friend, that this might not be a Decepticon weapon of mass destruction. Lloyd said, an intriguing look forming on his face. We may be looking at something from Cybertron's golden age, perhaps a relic of their so-called ancients. Now I'm interested. Back in the tunnel, as most of the group continued along, Layla's Alexander moved right alongside Akito's. She looked with concern in his direction once more before opening the communications channel and establishing a private line. Akito, I've established a private communication between my nightmare and yours, nobody can hear us. She told him, but he didn't give a response. What happened? What do you mean? He replied, trying to feign ignorance. You know what I'm talking about. What your brother did to you back there. Layla insisted. I know you, Akito. I know when something's bothering you. Iyano and the others got some kind of nightmare-inducing vision, and that was only through the neural link. But you received direct contact from Shang's dark Geass. You got the worst of it, I know you did. A conflicted look formed on Akito's face, which he tried to push back. The mission takes. I don't care about the mission right now, I care about you. Layla exclaimed, startling him. Akito, please, what did he do to you? I want to help you, but I can't do that if you don't tell me what's going on. Akito shuddered slightly. This was so like her, always trying to find a way to understand people who were in trouble and trying to find a way to help them. One could say she was sticking her nose where it doesn't belong, and he used to think that way of her. But, more recently, he found that aspect of her to be appealing. She cared for other people, she's always cared about other people, even total strangers. And, to be honest, he's always liked that about her. You, remember our time with the gypsies, when I told you about what my brother and I went through, what he did to our clan? He asked. Yes, I remember. She confirmed. Layla still shuddered at the very idea of someone doing something like that to their own family. Well, I was brought back to that memory, Akito shuddered. But, all the bodies, our clan, my mother, they came to life, like zombies and tried to drag me down with them. He instinctively put his nightmare on autopilot to continue along the path with the others, just so he could wrap his arms around his own body, shaking like a leaf. He took that memory and twisted it into something so evil. Akito, Layla was brought to tears just trying to visualize something like that. But she took a deep breath and spoke, but as she did, she failed to notice her blue Geass activating, almost automatically. Akito, listen to me. I told you before, that I'm happy he didn't kill you, and I meant every word of that. As she spoke, her words seemed to calm him down, almost as if they were reaching to the very depth of his soul. He didn't even register the blue rings forming in his eyes. What you went through back then was horrible, and I know you've struggled to try and move past it, but I know you're strong enough to. You don't have to constantly live in the shadow of your trauma or your brother's evil. You are one of the strongest people I know, and I know you can overcome this. But, even if you are that strong, all you need do is ask and I'll be there for you. I'll always be by your side to pull you out of that darkness. He took every word in stride, feeling her connect to him more deeply than ever before. Though that fear was still present in his mind, and the trauma of that night will likely linger there for a long time, it was less harmful now, because he knew he had someone who would help him through it. A smile graced his face. Layla, thank you. She smiled back at him, even though neither could see the other's face right now. They could almost feel their smiles toward one another, even as Layla's Geass vanished, as did the rings in Akito's eyes. Hey guys, I think we're here. Gino alerted as the group came to the end of their trail, the Autobots transforming into their normal forms, with the Alexanders standing up fully. They had indeed reached the end of the tunnel with a large stone wall, but what really caught their attention was something resembling a stone sarcophagus in front of them, one so large that it appeared to be fit for a Cybertronian. Is that a coffin? Ayano asked. Whatever it is, the relic has to be inside it. Strongarm said. Grindcore was already at the coffin, gripping the lid. Grindcore, be careful. Sideswipe told him. We don't know what's inside. But the large and green Autobot had already shoved off the lid of the sarcophagus, allowing everyone to see what was inside as they shined their lights into it. What lied inside appeared to be a Cybertronian skeleton, or whatever one could assume was the equivalent of one. It had long since rusted down, any kind of life or color was now gone, not even a trace of energon was left. This Cybertronian appeared no bigger than an Alexander in comparison to size. But there was something in its hands, as if this item was to be entombed with the deceased Cybertronian. There was an orb in the center with 4 triangular-shaped objects attached to each corner, giving it the shape of an incomplete two-dimensional diamond. Is that the relic? Grindcore asked. It has to be. There's literally nothing else here. Strongarm said. Yeah, but who is that? Ryo asked, referring to the deceased Cybertronian. Is it a bot or con? Yukiya asked. I don't think either. Sideswipe said. This guy's been buried here for a while, probably died before the war started. So, what do we do? Gino asked. We have the relic, we take it and we go. Akito said. We can identify the body later. Akito is right, we have what we came here for. It's time to go. Layla agreed. However, before either could make a move to grab it, the ceiling began to shake as pieces of rock and stone began to fall off. The group could hear the sounds of what appeared to be digging above them. Looks like we're fighting our way out of here. Ryo stated. Wait, I have an idea. Sideswipe stated. Gino, what's the most powerful gun you got? I can make an energy cannon with /Harkins, why? He replied. Blast us a hole out of here. We'll take the bad guys by surprise, it might give us some kind of advantage. Sideswipe told him. You got it. Everyone, get back. Gino ordered. Hang on. Layla reached with her Alexander's hands, gripping around the relic as the outside digging came ever closer. She used her nightmare to yank the mysterious artifact from its resting place before rolling back with everyone else just as Gino deployed the Tristan/Harkins onto the ceiling. They combined the second they made contact, and fired a condensed energy shot straight upwards. A massive energy blast erupted from the ground, forcing Steeljaw and his pack back while Underbite was thrown upwards by the raw force of the blast before crashing hard on the ground behind them. What in Cybertron was that? Thunderhoof questioned. It would seem our enemies have returned. Shin assumed a grin on his face. Let's make sure to end them this time. Immediately, the Tristan divider had pulled out of the hole that had been made via its Harkins. Once it was back up, it leapt straight toward the Thanatos with its dual swords, which the Thanatos blocked with its shield before both units landed on the ground to clash their weapons once again. 4 of the Alexander units had also climbed back up in their insect modes before opening fire on the Decepticons, forcing them to scatter as the Autobots just climbed back up, Strongarm drawing her crossbow to add to the fire while Sideswipe drew his sword and charged forward with Grimlock to engage Steeljaw and Underbite respectively. "Layla, take the relic and go," Akito told her as her Alexander was the last to climb up with the relic in its hands. "We'll keep them busy." But Akito, she tried to protest. "No, he's right," Strongarm agreed. "Get enough distance and call for a ground bridge, secure the relic back at base and we'll be right behind you." Though she hated the idea of leaving her friends and comrades, especially Akito with his wicked brother at such close proximity, she knew they were right. There was no telling what kind of powers this relic may hold, but she would not allow the Decepticons to abuse it for their own gain. She would secure it back at Horai Island and return to them to bring them back as well. "All right, but I will be back," Layla stated as she transformed her Alexander into its insectoid mode, the relic being held by the unit's sub-arms beneath the cockpit, before moving away. As the Decepticons gathered themselves and went on the offensive against Delta Team, the Tristan was once again knocked down by a tail slash from the Thanatos before he quickly noticed the white Alexander leaving the fray with the relic. He knew exactly who was in there, and just how important she was to Akito, for the reason, he flew after her. "Crap, he's going after Layla," Gino warned, causing every bot and human to look in shock to see the Thanatos already catching up to her, firing its shoulder and arm cannons at her, which she could just barely avoid with her Alexander. "Hang on, I'm coming." Sideswipe was about to go after her, but Steeljaw rushed him to knock him down with a punch. Ayano, Strongarm, and Yukiya attempted to fire their long-ranged weapons at the Thanatos, but all 3 of them were quickly intercepted by Fracture, who kicked Strongarm down before pulling out and swinging his largest weapon to keep Ayano and Yukiya's Alexanders at bay. "Get out of our way," Ayano exclaimed as she tried to thrust her longsword at him, but Fracture easily blocked it before drawing his smaller blade from his left arm to try and decapitate Yukiya's Alexander, which he just barely avoided. Akito shot his nightmare after Layla and Shin with Ryo's Alexander and Grindcore right behind him, but Underbite charged from the side to ram both and knock them down while Thunderhoof tried to block Akito's path. "You ain't going nowhere, Meatbee," the Tristan rammed its shoulder into Thunderhoof to clear the way. "Go, Akito," Gino exclaimed. Akito shot his Alexander as fast as he could, a look of desperation on his face as he tried to catch up to them. Layla screamed as one explosion from behind, shot by the Thanatos, arm cannon, knocked her Alexander down, the relic falling from the sub-arm's grip and onto the ground underneath her. She gasped as she saw the Thanatos land in front of her and aimed its arm cannon directly at her. "You care for Akito, don't you, Layla?" Shin grinned evilly. "You love him, that makes me sick. Love is such a painful feeling, especially when that loved one leaves you. Allow me to demonstrate." He charged his cannon and was ready to fire onto her, her eyes widening with terror. "No." Akito's Alexander Liberté swooped in with a kick to knock the cannon away from Layla, causing the blast to misfire and obliterate a section of the nearby temple. The Alexander's free hand grabbed the Thanatos cannon arm as Akito tried to bring his Nightmare's katana down onto Shin, but the Thanatos' own free hand grabbed the katana arm, both Nightmares wrestling against each other. "Akito!" Layla exclaimed. "Stay away from her," he exclaimed at his brother. "You took everything from me, brother, you will not take her too." A look of psychotic rage formed on Shin's face. "Akito, you're supposed to die at my hands. Why can't you see that?" He aimed the Thanatos shoulder cannons at both Akito and Layla. "Even if this kills me, I'll drag you both down to hell myself if I have to." In that instant, Layla's blue Geass manifested in her eyes once again, causing blue rings to form in not just Akito's eyes, but also that of Ryo, Yukiya, and Ayano. But, even more surprising, was the fact the mysterious relic underneath Layla's Alexander began to glow as well. The orb in the center was already emanating a red light. "BRS levels are spiking again," Chloe exclaimed as another alert came in for the team back at base. "Again? Why now?" Claus shouted. Can't you sever the link or something? Cecile questioned. Not in the middle of a crisis like this. Anna replied. Wait, something's different. Sophie got a good look at the readings on her console with Lloyd over her shoulder. This isn't like all the other times, or even what happened recently. This energy reading, it's not dark energon, Lloyd said. It's different. They're brainwaves, Akito's, Ryo's, Yukiya's, Ayano's, they're all syncing perfectly, Sophie gasped as a new reading suddenly popped up. They're syncing, with Layla. Stay away from them. Ryo shouted, the blue ring in his eyes glowing brighter as his Alexander kicked back Underbite in the face before he rushed towards Akito, Layla, and Shin. I'm not letting you kill Akito or Layla. You won't hurt our friends. Ayano exclaimed as her Alexander flipped over Fracture while Yukiya used his to trip up the Decepticon before they both gunned it as well. We'll keep them safe. Yukiya also cried out as his and Ayano's eyes shined with the blue rings of Layla's Geass as well. Shin noticed the trio incoming toward them, causing him to scowl even further. Die, die. All of you just die. He screamed. No. Layla exclaimed, the relic below her changing its red glow to blue, as if the relic itself was syncing with her own Geass. Nobody is dying here. The second those words left her lips, the relic suddenly shot up and attached itself to the chest of her Alexander, enveloping the nightmare in a bright blue aura, causing the nightmare to levitate into the air before 4 energy bolts shot from the relic and toward Akito's Alexander Liberté and the 3 Alexander Valiants belonging to Ayano, Yukiya, and Ryo. Suddenly, Layla was no longer in her cockpit, but in what appeared to be a white void, hovering motionlessly. She looked around her to see Akito, Ryo, Ayano, and Yukiya were all beside her, all 4 of them looking just as confused as she was. The blue Geass sigil in her eyes glowed brightly, along with the blue rings in those of the others. But before any of them could question what was happening, a large figure appeared before them. He was clearing Cybertronian, but nothing like they've ever seen before. He was certainly larger than any Autobot or Decepticon they've encountered, more than 3 times their own size, even dwarfing the like of Optimus. His appearance was incredibly well built, as if his arms, legs, and body were also capable of operating independently. But it was the presence this being carried as he gazed down upon them. There was something of an unpredictable element to him, maybe a bit mischievous, but there was wisdom there too. As if this being seemed to embody the nature of change itself. He looked down at them with a smile and a nod before speaking 4 familiar words. Till all are one. Layla's Alexander hovered higher into the air as the Alexander Liberté and 3 Alexander Valiants hovered with her before encircling the white Alexander that the relic was attached to, almost like planets orbiting a star. They were then pulled in closer and closer before coming together, creating a bright flash of blue light, drawing the attention of Gino, Shin, Steeljaw, Sideswipe, Strongarm, Grindcore, Underbite, Fracture, and Thunderhoof, all looking at the phenomenon with shock and awe. Inside this surge of energy, Layla's Alexander extended its arms and legs in 4 separate directions, its shoulder-mounted rifle splitting up to attach to both arms and create extensions of some sort, with the land spinners on each of the legs doing the same thing. Akito's Alexander Liberté came towards the right arm, shifting and transforming, its arms and legs merging with the body as the katana and shield-like attachment fused to the front and back respectively, taking the form of a bladed arm-like attachment. Ryo's Alexander Valiant came towards the left arm, also shifting and transforming with its arms and legs merging with the body, the axe and large shoulder-mounted cannon merging together and with the whole body on its back. Yukiya's Alexander Valiant changed in a slightly different manner. It went into a form resembling its insect-like mode, with the arms and legs being somewhat spread out as the large long-ranged rifle separated into 2 halves. One half shifting and transforming, attaching to the back and pointing straight upward, coming toward the lower left. Ayano's Alexander Valiant changed and transformed just like Yukiya's, similar to its insect mode with its arms and legs somewhat spread out. The other half of Yukiya's rifle attached to this Alexander's weapon and stuck upward, forming a joint-like connection as it came toward the lower right. All 4 units merged with Layla's Alexander, Akito's at the upper right with Ryo's at the upper left, forming a pair of large arms, with Yukiya and Ayano coming up to attach as well, forming the left and right legs respectively. With one final flash of energy, the combined form of all 5 Alexanders landed on the ground, revealing itself to everyone around them. Holy, Sideswipe looked in awe. Sweet Solus Prime, Strongarm exclaimed. That is, so freaking awesome. Grindcore exclaimed with a grin. For once in his life, Gino had absolutely nothing to say. Did they just combine? He remembered seeing the Constructicons forming into Devastator and Combaticons merging into Bruticus as well, but he would never once in a million years expect human-made nightmares to do the same thing. All the Decepticons were rendered speechless as well as even Underbite's jaw hung open. Steeljaw looked in just as much shock as everyone else, but a scowl formed on his face as he growled in anger and even fear. But none appeared more shocked than Shinhyuga Shang himself as he stood the closest to this combined Alexander unit that stood about a little more than twice his own height. While this unit wasn't nearly as big as the likes of Bruticus, this was an unexpected development that nobody could ever anticipate. Back at base, everyone's eyes widened and their mouths hung open as they saw through the visual feed of the Tristan Divider what had just happened, and all of them, even the likes of Claus and Lloyd, were speechless. Did our nightmares just merge together? Claus questioned, looking at his flask. Yeah, I've been drinking too much. No, we're all seeing it, but that should be impossible, Cecile said. We don't have the technology for. It has to be the relic. Anna said. Somehow it combined the Alexanders. Sophie, what happened to Anna and the others? We have vitals from all 5 of them, they're alive. Sophie reported. But their brainwaves are perfectly synced, it's almost as if they're sharing one mind together. I don't know what sort of alien magic tech those kids have gotten their hands on, but I'm not complaining. Lloyd said with a laugh. Let's see what this bad boy can do. How? Steeljaw exclaimed as the Alexander Combiner unit stood tall. Inside the unit, Layla, Akito, Ryo, Yukiya, and Ayano were still inside each of their individual cockpits from the respective parts that their nightmares transformed into. Layla was in the central torso, Akito was the right arm, Ryo was the left, while Ayano and Yukiya were the right and left legs respectively. Layla's eyes still glowed with the blue Geass sigil while everyone else still had their blue rings in their eyes. Hey, are you guys feeling this? Yukiya asked. Yeah, I hear you, not through the comms but, Ayano was at a loss for words. In my head, Ryo finished. What the hell? I think my Geass connected to all of you through the Alexanders, neural link, and that somehow connected to the relic that combined us into this form. Layla assumed. Well, let's take advantage of this state while we can. Akito was the first to get them to focus. Somehow, our minds are synced together with this unit, and knowing my brother, he's going to hack us to pieces any second. True to Akito's word, the cybernetic Shin gnashed his teeth together, to the point where a tooth even chipped before he gave a roar and fired his heavy artillery shoulder cannons. But Akito and Ryo acted quickly with Layla, the Alexander Combiner crossing its arms together, generating a shield-like energy barrier that blocked the blasts, much to everyone's surprise. Whoa, we got a shield. Ryo exclaimed. I think we got a sword, too. Ayano said as Akito pulled on the arm's controls, causing a large katana-shaped energy blade to extend from the combiner's right arm. Listen, everyone, I don't know what happened, but whatever it was, it happened for a reason. Layla began. I know the bond we have, with each other and with the other Autobots and Black Knights is unbreakable. No matter what evil we face it together. Unity, that is how we win this war. That is how we take our world back from the Decepticons. Damn right, Ryo smirked. Let's take these guys down a peg. Ayano also smirked. Got me all fired up. Yukiya smirked as well. Even Akito smirked. Well then Layla, we'll follow your lead. She smiled with a blush before getting serious as they faced the Thanatos again, the crazed Shin giving a war cry as he shot at them. Let's do this. Together. Layla cried out as the Alexander Combiner ran, charging at the Thanatos. The gap was quickly closed as Akito raised the sword arm and sliced at the Thanatos, but it missed as Shin tried to circle around. He's behind us. Akito reported. I got him. Yukiya quickly lifted the left leg to deal a kick to the Thanatos, scoring a hit that sent it crashing and rolling across the ground. Ryo noticed a targeting system coming online in his cockpit. Ho ho ho. He laughed. We got guns, I sure as hell ain't wasting them. The Alexander Combiner's left arm revealed a chain gun-like device that locked onto the recovering Thanatos. "Light him up," Ayano ordered, the gun unleashing rapid-fire energy blasts, forcing Shin on the defensive as he tried to fly away, but Ryo kept their gun trained on him. Seeing one of their most powerful assets in such a defensive state made Steeljaw more than a little peeved. He turned back to his pack to see they were still in the same speechless state as before. "Don't just stand there," he growled to them, getting their attention. "Tear that thing apart." Nah. They turned to see Sideswipe, Grindcore, Strongarm, and the Tristan Divider blocking their path. "You're gonna have to get through us, first." Sideswipe grinned. Steeljaw growled even more before he roared as he charged forward, to which Gino responded in kind, driving the Tristan Divider forward to clash his Nightmare's swords against Steeljaw's claws. Grindcore ran forward to tackle Underbite and pin him all the way to the wall of the nearby temple, leaving Sideswipe and Strongarm to face Fracture and Thunderhoof together. Grindcore grabbed Underbite by the back of his head and shoved him repeatedly into the wall of the temple until Underbite had enough and pulled back on his hind legs to kick Grindcore off and down. "Nobody shoves my face in the dirt," Underbite charged at Grindcore. But the green Autobot anticipated this, seeing his chances he stuck to the ground right when Underbite got to him, allowing Grindcore to deliver a surprise uppercut to his enemy's jaw, sending him reeling back before Grindcore grabbed him by the face and used his own strength to pull and begin spinning him around, picking up speed and momentum with each spin until Grindcore let go and sent him crashing deeper into the temple, where a part of it collapsed inward on the Decepticon inside. "Oops, hope that wasn't important," Grindcore said with a smile. Sideswipe parried his sword with Fracture's own blade, coming back to back with Strongarm as Thunderhoof attempted to charge her. They both shared looks and nodded to one another before they ducked and rolled to the side, causing Thunderhoof to accidentally ram into Fracture with enough force to knock him down and out. Before Thunderhoof could even question what happened, Sideswipe and Strongarm both appeared in front of him to deliver a double punch to his face and knock him out as well. "Not bad, rookie," Sideswipe complimented the female Autobot. "Not bad yourself," Strongarm nodded with a smile. Gino continued to use his Tristan's MVS blades to block and parry Steeljaw's relentless claw swipes, but when he tried to go on the offensive, Steeljaw caught both swords in his claws with a growl, but Gino saw this coming. He launched a pair of slash Harkins from his arms to knock Steeljaw back before the Harkins combined together to unleash an energy blast that knocked Steeljaw back quite a bit. "How's that for a meatbag?" Gino grinned triumphantly. Meanwhile, the Thanatos still tried to duke it out with the Alexander Combiner. Getting up in its face, but a hammer fist from Ryo's arm unit knocked it down to the ground, but Shin quickly recovered as it flew at the head unit to lash out its tail weapon toward what he hoped was Layla, but Aikido quickly raised the sword to block the strike before slicing to sever the entire tail and leave the surprised Shin vulnerable for Ayano to pull back on the right leg and deliver a kick to knock the Thanatos down once again. No, I will not lose to you children. Not again, Shin cried out. "You want to know why you keep losing, brother?" Aikido told him. "Because I think that's what you want." "What?" Shin questioned. "You heard M. Ayano stated. You think this world is a dark and miserable place. And you're not wrong, it's got some shitty people in it, with you near the top of it all." Yukiya added. "But this world's also got a lot that's worth fighting for," Ryo said. "We have friends, family, people that we love, with many more families out there hoping for a better world for their children," Layla stated. "And that is a future that's worth fighting for. But all you see is pain and darkness." Aikido continued. "That's all you've ever seen, isn't it? It's all you really can see. You don't want to live in this world, so you want to die, but you want to take everyone else with you, thinking it'll save everyone from this pain. To be honest, I pity you, brother." Pity. He pitied him. Aikido dared to pity him. After everything he's done, everything he worked for, his overall goal of destroying this wretched and insignificant world, his younger brother offered him pity. He was beyond words now. Shin roared in rage as he shot the Thanatos at them once more, but Aikido had the Alexander Combiner's sword arm ready and waiting. Slash. Asterisk. The Thanatos was cleaved completely in half by the waist, both halves fell and bounced in the sand before coming to a stop. The Alexander Combiner turned and looked at the wrecked Nightmare, almost expectantly. A port in the upper half opened as the cybernetic Shin Hyuga Sheng pulled himself out. He turned to glare at the combiner and all its pilots inside. He turned to see the rest of his team had all been defeated, with Steeljaw appearing barely conscious himself. With a deep sigh, he appeared to push his mad rage aside as a logical expression formed on his cybernetic face. Perhaps another time, he contacted his partner. Steeljaw, our forces are down. It's time to retreat. Steeljaw had pulled himself up to see the Tristan approaching him. Agreed, he said with a growl before contacting the Nemesis. This is Steeljaw to Decepticon Command, requesting emergency ground bridge at our coordinates. Get a portal open to each individual signal. Now. In that instant, a ground bridge portal opened behind him, prompting Steeljaw to leap into it and escape. At the same time, a portal opened underneath Fracture and Thunderhoof, pulling them in, while another did the same for Underbite, leaving only one more portal to open under the remains of the Thanatos and Shin. He paid one last glare towards Akito. We're not done yet, he said before the portal closed, taking Shin away from the battle. We'll be waiting, Akito acknowledged. Layla sighed in relief, the battle over, her Geass deactivating. But the instant that it did, a white flash engulfed their Alexander combiner, causing it to separate back into each individual Alexander that landed rather roughly on the ground. BRS levels are declining. They're no longer in sync. Chloe reported. Biometrics indicate that all 5 of them are alive. Hilda added. So that's it, we won. Joe hoped. Sure, feels that way. Lloyd smirked. All it took was some alien magic tech Deus Ex Machina stuff to pull it off. Did you just say we won because we were lucky? Claus asked. No, luck is completely different from a Deus Ex Machina. Lloyd corrected. Don't bother trying to understand him. Cecile told Claus and Anna. I honestly gave up on that a long time ago. But I'm just really happy it all turned out well. That makes 2 of us. Anna breathed in relief. 3. Claus agreed. This calls for a drink. He pulled out his flask again and gulped it all down. Sophie shook her head with a smile, glad that it all turned out as well. Whatever this relic was, she knew it was the reason they were able to sync perfectly. This was the very same thing they studied and hoped for, the same pursuit that led to her husband being rendered comatose. But, now that it looks like they have a means to perfect it, she might just get him back. Back in Egypt, the Autobots and Tristan Divider regrouped with all 5 Alexanders as their cockpits opened, with the pilots climbing out. Whoa, that was, whoa. Ryo couldn't find the words to describe what he felt back there. It's like, we all shared the same mind, Yukiya said, feeling the same way. Weird but, it also felt so, natural. Ayano added. Like, we were all part of the same whole. Till all are one, Akito said as he and Layla walked up. I think I know what that means now. He looked towards Layla with a smile, causing her to smile back. I'll tell you what it was. It was awesome, Grindcore exclaimed. Super mega awesome. Heck yeah, it was. Gino stood up from the open cockpit of his Tristan. Nightmare Combiner baby. He raised in the fist enthusiastically. Quick, combine back together so I can go a few rounds with it. Grindcore told the 5 pilots. Let's find out just how the heck that happened first. Sideswipe said. Seriously, Nightmare Combiners. That shouldn't be possible. It was the relic. There's no other explanation, Layla said. Somehow, I felt it connect to my Geass, and since that allowed me to connect to Akito and the others through the Alexander's neural link, it must have been enough to bring it together. All their eyes set upon the aforementioned relic, one that appeared to be merged with the chest of Layla's white Alexander, almost as if the relic had now become a permanent part of it. The enigma of combination, Strongarm said, recognizing it. The what? Ryo asked. A relic of the original 13 primes. Strongarm explained. Nexus Prime, to be specific. But he wasn't just a prime. Cybertronian lore indicates that he was the very first combiner, the strongest one of them all, even. The enigma is said to contain a fracture of his power, capable of fostering unity and cooperation of the minds of sentient creatures within its proximity. It must have indeed connected to Layla's Geass and those it connected her to combine your nightmares together. Everyone looked towards Strongarm with a surprised expression. Aren't you supposed to be a rookie cop or something? Yukiya asked, judging Strongarm by her paint job resembling a police vehicle. How do you know all this? When I wasn't training, I would sometimes read up on Cybertronian lore and history to pass the time. Strongarm summed up. Ayano gave a half smile to her partner. We really need to get you a hobby, Strongarm. Reading is my hobby, she replied, not seeing what was wrong with that. Still, a relic of the 13, that's pretty surreal. Sideswipe commented. Does that mean we can combine again? Yukiya asked. I'm really hoping that whole thing wasn't a one-time deal or anything. I do believe we are capable of achieving that form again. Layla confirmed. Provided we're in close proximity to one another. So, what are you gonna name it? Grindcore asked. Name it. Aikido questioned. Come on, all combiner modes have a nickname to M. Grindcore insisted. Heck yeah. The cons got Bruticus and Devastator, now we got a cool combiner on our side, we need name for it. Gino agreed. Layla took a moment to think, trying to come up with one that she hoped everyone else would like, particularly those that made up the transformation. It seemed she had one figured out. Hercules. Hercules. Ayano questioned. As in the son of Zeus. The demigod, yes. Layla confirmed. I thought you would go with an Egyptian name or something, considering we're in Egypt and all. Rio said. Layla giggled. You know what's funny? Alexander the Great, whom our nightmares are named after, was actually a pharaoh himself. Wait, seriously? Rio questioned in honest surprise. But wasn't he Greek or something? Technically he was Macedonian, Layla explained. But when he liberated Egypt from the Persians, he was considered their savior, a god-man, and was given the title of pharaoh. He created a vast empire that stretched from Macedonia to Egypt, and from Greece to part of India. Guy sure had ambition, Gino commented. In Greece, his feats were so legendary that they considered him a son of Zeus. Layla continued. Of course, he was no real demigod. So, I thought it fitting to name our combined nightmare after a real one, and arguably the most famous. Hercules. Ayano liked the way it sounded. I like it. Yeah, naming our thing after the strongest man in the world. I can get behind that. Yukiya approved. Sounds good to me. Rio grinned. Agreed. Even Aikido nodded. Well then, it's official. Sideswipe announced. The very first nightmare combiner, Hercules. Ah yeah. Gino and Grindcore both cheered as even Strongarm gave a nod of approval. Now let's celebrate back home. Sideswipe accessed his comms. Mission accomplished. We need a ground bridge, please. A ground bridge portal opened up before them with the Autobots and Tristan being the first to enter. Rio, Yukiya, and Ayano got back in their nightmares, the boys already powering them up as they prepared to enter the portal, but Ayano noticed Layla and Aikido were still in the ground. You two coming. In a minute, Layla told her. Go on, we'll be right behind you. A knowing smirk fell on Ayano's face before she drove her nightmare into the ground bridge, leaving the two alone. There's something you want to say, Layla? Aikido asked. Yes, before she even realized it, she wrapped her arms around Aikido, surprising him. Thank you. You saved me. I thought I might die back there but you saved me, thank you. Aikido relaxed, returning the gesture briefly before they let go. If I'm being honest, you saved my life a long time ago. Layla gasped in surprise. If it weren't for you, I don't know where I'd be right now, Aikido began. I get I was recruited as expendable muscle back in the EU but, you never treated me like that. You treated me and everyone else like we were really people. Because you are. You are a person, Aikido. Not a number or something to be thrown away. Layla insisted. And I'm grateful for that. Aikido continued. Even though, it didn't seem like it at the time. He looked away with a shamed expression. I was detached, I didn't care about much of anything, not even whether I lived or died. After what my brother did, I was empty, alone, unfeeling, but when I met you, and later the Black Knights and Autobots, I began to feel again. You helped me to see, made me think about the kind of person I really wanted to be. She looked at him in awe, her eyes wavering as he continued. I want to be someone who can help people. Someone who can protect those who can't protect themselves. Aikido said with a determined expression on his face. When we defeat the Decepticons, there will be much healing to do. The world has suffered so much, even long before they took over, so it won't be easy. But, Layla, if anyone can help fix this world, it'd be you. I know you have the support of the right people who want the same thing, and I'm one of them. He gently but firmly grabbed her shoulders, causing her to gasp as her cheeks turned pink, Akito looking deep into her eyes. Layla, I will be by your side always. In the war against the Decepticons, rebuilding the world, and long after. I will never leave you. Tears of joy poured down her face, her lips curving upward in an emotional smile. Before she even realized it, she pressed her lips against his own. His eyes widened in surprise, but they quickly closed as he pulled her in closer and returned the kiss. After about a minute, they pulled apart, their cheeks pink as they looked into each other's eyes with content smiles. Now, let's go home. We've got a war to win. Akito told her. You've got that right. And this at the end of Season 2 Part 10 of this What If. Hope you guys like it. Do not forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.